In this video, we'll discuss the joys of finally giving into your dark side,
You're right. I could use a little more fun in my life.
more failed QuickTime events,
Gotcha!
and the struggles of choosing whether to live responsibly or fully embrace the power you're given.
If that thing gets control over you, gutting is still an option. Got me?
All of this while also examining the behind-the-scenes details, Easter eggs, and references contained within Spider-Man Web of Shadows.
Drop the device at once.
Moon Knight? Hello!
But to properly do so, we should first start at the beginning with its development. Like all Spider-Man games in the early 2000s, it's produced by Activision. You'll also see Treyarch in the opening credits, the same company that developed Spider-Man 2, Ultimate Spider-Man, and Spider-Man 3. However, Treyarch are more of a support team this time around, as Shaba Games takes the reins. Prior to this, Shaba had focused primarily on extreme sports games and felt that experience would translate well into an action game. Studio head Chris Scholes describes how their experience pairs with Spider-Man during this interview quote. Shaba's background is in extreme sports games. We did some Tony Hawk games, Matt Hoffman, Wakeboarding Unleashed, and all the time when we were developing those, it was always in the back of our minds that it would be so awesome to have that same sort of experience except fighting all along the way. So for us, while this is our first Spider-Man game, we've been thinking about this game for about 10 years now. Spider-Man's the perfect character to really realize this vision because of the way he moves, and it's really what you expect from Spider-Man. So we thought we were able to bring something new to the franchise that just hasn't existed, not only in a Spider-Man game, but really in any superhero game. Shaba wanted to do for combat what Spider-Man 2 did for web swinging and totally revolutionize how it works. The idea was not only to improve the general combat mechanics, but also get you fighting in the air, as well as more importantly, on the walls. This is where Shaba put a lot of their development time because ultimately, they didn't have much as the game only took 17 months from start to finish. That's really quick since you typically want at least 2 years in order to really flesh things out. So to help give them a head start, they began with the Spider-Man 3 game engine. You can actually see this in action thanks to an early milestone build on hiddenpalace.org that was patched by Lilafur and Spidey Santa, although the original uploader of the build is still unknown. It of course looks just like Spider-Man 3 for the most part, but it contained some changes as Web of Shadows was progressing, although at the time its title was Red vs. Black. Already we can see some adjustments, like the classic red suit looking much more vibrant, although still clearly using Spider-Man 3's model as a base. The black suit actually looks really cool even at this early stage, and you can even switch suits on the fly, an exciting feature missing from Spider-Man 3. There's some funny details in this build too, like a symbiote test mission that uses the Spider-Man 3 Venom model for each enemy, and we'll look at a couple other details later, but I should mention that I explore this build in much further detail in a Patreon and memberships exclusive video if you'd like to see more about it. As far as how Shaba utilized the Spider-Man 3 engine, lead gameplay programmer Tim O'Neill describes this during an interview with sknr.net. For Web of Shadows, we began from the Spider-Man 3 engine and overhauled it extensively. This framework allowed our team to work in parallel and to start answering some of the high-level gameplay questions on cameras and combat, while the underpinnings of the graphics and AI systems were being thoroughly revamped. At the end of the day, there is very little old code left over, and most of the outwardly visible components have been remade, but this head start was invaluable to crafting the game we have today. As far as the game's narrative, Tim states in a separate interview that the gameplay came first and informed the type of story and characters they wanted to include. Shaba wanted the player to face off against dozens of enemies at a time, so they decided that a symbiote invasion paired nicely with that. With the basic story concept in place, they enlisted Brian Reed to pen the script. If that name's familiar, it could be because we just discussed him in the Ultimate Spider-Man video. Reed had started as a developer on that game, but through working with comic writer Brian Michael Bendis, he became a writer for Marvel, working primarily on Ms. Marvel comics, or as she's better known today, Captain Marvel. Reed did some freelance work on games while writing comics, but it's still cool to see him circle back to another Spider-Man game. But next, I want to dig deeper into the story by walking through it together. Along the way, I'll call out various comic references and behind-the-scenes details as they arise, and towards the end of the video, we'll also further discuss the open world content, gameplay, and sound design. Also, just a quick disclaimer that I played a PS3 copy of the game on an emulator which helped enhance the graphics, but there was also some occasional texture flickering that I couldn't resolve. That's on my end and won't reflect in any of the criticisms I have, but I wanted to mention it since you'll likely notice it at certain parts in the video. But with that said, let's get into the story. Easily the most recognizable part of this game is its opening cutscene, and oh my gosh, the drama. We see that S.H.I.E.L.D. is fighting a losing battle against the symbiotes as Spider-Man uncharacteristically walks past them, clearly distressed and lost in thought due to what we can only assume was something very impactful occurring moments before, all while Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata plays in the background, reinforcing a somber and sad tone. I get the impression Shaba Games was shooting for a deep sense of tragedy here, but instead it comes across quite melodramatic and cheesy, but kind of in a good way. It's still really entertaining, which is probably why it's become a meme format in recent years. I also have to admit that despite its cheesiness, it's succeeding at least in setting the right amount of intrigue from the start, especially when we hear the memories of prior conversations that are plaguing Peter's mind.
If that thing gets control over you, gutting is still an option. Got me?
This city is going to be ours. Just wait and see.
When this is said and done, who will the people remember as their savior?
So altogether, this sequence raises a lot of questions right off the bat, such as, what's causing so much chaos in the city? What happened to give Peter so much internal anguish? Who were those prior conversations with? Has Spider-Man failed the city? All of those will be addressed later in the game, but for now, I think this is a very impactful start for the story, since it got me hooked by piquing my curiosity about the surrounding narrative. For the most part, I'm also liking the mood that it's setting, since it feels darker and more introspective compared to what we've experienced in other Spider-Man games. More importantly, even at this early stage, I got the feeling that Shaba Games were striving for something new, and that alone had me engaged and ready to see what they had to offer. In the next section, we're sent after some straggling symbiotes walking zombie-like on the street, which introduces us to our first taste of combat. Right out the gate, I was really impressed with the combat system. Even just using the basic attacks instantly felt so satisfying. You get a great sense of speed, and it just flows really nicely. If you saw my videos on Spider-Man 3 and Ultimate Spider-Man, you'll recall that I was quite critical of those combat systems, so I was immediately excited by Shaba's upgraded mechanics. One detail here that I thought was cool that I didn't notice until later playthroughs is that Spider-Man's melee combat abilities are completely unlocked during the sequence. That makes sense since we're technically starting at a later point in the game's story, but beyond that, I think it works well by giving the player unrestricted access to fully explore Spider-Man's abilities, even if they're not aware they're doing so. I should mention that some abilities are still locked, like special attacks and web strikes, but we'll get into those a bit later. For now though, I like the freedom to which Shaba lets players explore the melee. Things get taken even further as the game next introduces us to what I believe to be its signature feature, wall combat. Spider-Man witnesses a S.H.I.E.L.D. aircraft crash into the side of a building, and it's soon swarmed by all sorts of symbiote creatures, so Spider-Man leaps onto the side of the wall to begin the fight. The ability to battle on a wall feels like such a huge innovation for a Spider-Man game. Not only that, but the developers allow you to move from the wall, to the ground, to the air, and any combination of that freely during combat. I'm honestly blown away that they were able to accomplish this, because I can only imagine how stressful it would be technically to get the camera to cooperate with these movements. In an interview by Planet Xbox 360, studio head Chris Scholes describes those struggles. It's a whole host of other issues, you know. It's a lot of camera issues you have to work with, a lot of pathing and AI issues because now it's like enemies can go anywhere. So it's a real challenge, but we thought inherently that was Spider-Man. Early on, it was kind of a mantra for us, that you're going to fight in the streets, up on the walls, and through the air. Shaba's gameplay ambitions are further described by Tim O'Neill and Tom Tusher in a behind-the-scenes video.
That we really wanted to improve on was previous Spider-Man games had really felt like the swinging and the combat were two separate elements. And one of our biggest focuses was to try and marry the two together so that you can actually fight while you're moving.
Our biggest achievement and invention that we've done with this game is taking enemies from the ground, taking them to the wall, and then to the air, and doing this full circle of ground, wall, air combat. It's really never been seen in a game before.
It's incredibly impressive how Shaba Games were able to seamlessly tie traversal and combat together. I've reviewed a lot of Spider-Man games on this channel, but this is the first one that's truly felt like it allows you to utilize the environment like Spider-Man. We'll talk about it more as we continue through the game, but already I'm hooked just based on the wall combat. Continuing on, Spider-Man next rescues one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents from the symbiotes.
Now where is Cage and his search party? Where is MJ?
Whoa, that was not the voice I was expecting to come out of Spider-Man. Usually I'd wait until the sound design section of the video to discuss the voice acting, but I might as well address this one up front. So in all honesty, I'm not a fan of the voice for Spider-Man this time around. Not because I think the voice actor, Mike Vaughn, is doing a bad job, more so that I think he was miscast. His voice just doesn't feel like it fits this Spider-Man to me. I think it's because the tone of the game feels more mature, and from what we'll learn later in the story, this seems to also be a young adult Spider-Man who's been at the vigilante game for years at this point. While Vaughn's voice sounds younger and nasally, something I feel would match closer to a younger Spider-Man, like in Ultimate Spider-Man, for example.
Don't make me hurt you, Eddie. I'm totally serious.
That being said, I'll have some compliments for Vaughn's Spider-Man later in the video, but as of right now, the voice feels in contrast to the game, and it's taking me out of the moment often.
Where's Cage and his search party? The civilian volunteers! Pretty redhead, arm in a cast! You are no help!
That APC! We got vehicles inbound!
MJ!
So Peter is frantically looking for Mary Jane and Luke Cage, for reasons unknown to us yet. Shortly after this, they find us, as her and Cage drive through a bunch of symbiotes in a tiny little car. I thought it was funny how Cage is hunched over trying to fit into it too. Once they park, Peter gets a chance to speak with them.
Let's go.
MJ! I was so worried!
Damn it!
You best play it cool, man.
Is it really you this time?
Come on, we gotta go.
Look, I promise I won't use it again.
You promise? We are way past that.
We ain't got time for this.
Oh no, get away. Get away!
Come on.
Don't do it! Just come with me! No!
So a lot is happening here, and the player is left with even more questions. Why are Luke and MJ so mad at Peter? Why was MJ so worried when Black Cat emerged? Why was Peter seemingly more conflicted than scared? And what happened when Peter was engulfed by symbiotes at the end there? Well, the game will make you wait for all of those answers until much later in your playthrough, so we'll discuss them and their impact as they're revealed in the story, because I have some thoughts on it. As far as my thoughts at this moment, I'm still enjoying the intrigue this opening scene creates. I'm also liking the post-apocalyptic vibes, like with MJ running around with a shotgun. Again, it's very different to anything we've seen in a Spider-Man game before, and it feels like something out of a zombie movie. There are actually rumors that prior to the developers settling on a symbiote invasion, the original idea was for it to be a Marvel Zombies type game, although I've been unable to verify that. But moving forward, well, maybe it's more accurate to say moving backward, since we're now thrown to the actual beginning of the game 4 days prior during one of Spider-Man's encounters with Eddie Brock, Venom. MJ is injured in the middle of the street, while Venom has Spider-Man in his clutches. Before Venom is able to bite Spidey's head off, part of the symbiote begins to transfer over to him against Eddie's wishes.
Venom, get ready for a world of pain.
This begins our tutorial for the black suit, which in this game features a whole suite of combat abilities unique to it. We start off with one of the coolest ones, the ability to lift cars and throw them at enemies, which both showcases Peter's increased strength, but also his carelessness for public property and innocent bystanders. It's actually kind of hilarious because you can even launch cars with people still in them. Destruction also receives more of a focus in the gameplay as Shaba rebuilt their Manhattan to include destructible environments. You can't knock buildings completely down or anything like that, but during fights you'll see the environment take damage. It's a detail that I'm really glad they included because it tremendously increased the immersiveness for me and added to the cinematic quality of the gameplay. In an interview with IGN, Chris Schultz describes why they included it. What we're trying to do most is, again, make the city interactive. To me, the place we really wanted to put our money was action-reaction. If you punch a guy into a storefront, you want to see shattered glass go up. You want to be able to pick up the things on the street and hawk them and really interact. It just makes the city so much more alive. Chris was right, and it's a lot of fun launching cars at Venom here. Once we've lobbed a few more at him, he'll start to take things personal. I want to briefly show this next clip because it's one of the coolest shots of Eddie and Venom in the game, and it's just straight up creepy.
You dare to take the others from me? I will take the girl from you.
Venom then begins to slow walk towards MJ with the goal of killing her. He's already weakened, so you just need to beat him up a little more to prevent him from reaching her. However, I was curious of what would happen if you just let him walk up to her, and you actually get a pretty lengthy fail scene. When you prevent Venom from reaching MJ, Peter will knock him to the ground and begin to confront him. He's then distracted by MJ and turns his back to Venom, which was enough time for him to escape. As Peter returns to MJ, the cutscene becomes a bit awkward to me, so I'll let you watch and then we'll discuss.
Is she okay?
I got your birthday present, but then there was this loud noise and...
Everything's fine.
Let's go.
You're gonna be fine. I love my present. I love my present.
I'm really not sure what they were going for there. It all seems really random, like the way MJ has a birthday present ready for him during this big chaotic fight. But more than that, I'm unsure why there's a present used in this moment at all, when you could just have MJ carted away to the hospital like normal. Also, Peter sounded like he's conflicted about something at the end here, but I'm unsure what. It all just comes off a bit odd. If I had to guess what they're going for, I think the present has two purposes. The first is to describe what MJ was up to when the fight broke out, presumably birthday shopping before Venom attacked her. Beyond that, I think it's meant to humanize MJ a bit for the player and make her more approachable. As we've already seen, and will continue to see, MJ spends a lot of the game being a bit of a hard ass, usually yelling at Peter, for justifiable reasons I might add, but my suspicion is that, for the player, that can feel a bit abrasive, which could be problematic when the player is given the choice of which girlfriend they want Peter to have by the end of the game, as part of the multiple endings. We'll of course dig into that later in the video, but for now, that's the best guess I've got regarding this birthday present moment. By the way, if you zoom in on the gift itself, you can kind of see what it is, and at first I thought it was a graphing calculator, since Peter's such a nerd. What it actually is a new phone, which we'll see him use to call people later. As a quick aside, I know it may seem odd that I'm harping on this cutscene, but I want to point it out because it's one of the first moments that illustrates an ongoing issue I have with the game, which is that its narrative and dialogue can be a bit rough around the edges, and it's something we'll see more examples of as we continue forward. But next, we get a taste of some additional gameplay mechanics as we follow MJ's ambulance to the hospital. The first is that we can switch suits on the fly. This by itself was so exciting to see, especially after covering Treyarch's Spider-Man 3 game. If you've seen that video, you'll recall that I was disappointed that despite the symbiote suit being an important feature of that game, you couldn't switch to it at will. It was solely based on the narrative, so having the freedom and Web of Shadows to switch suits seamlessly was such a great surprise. Thematically, that's of course really awesome, but it also opens up a lot of freedom in the combat, since you can switch suits mid-fight. As we follow MJ's ambulance, we're also given a small web swinging tutorial. I actually don't have much to say about the web swinging this time around. It feels good, but it just doesn't feel all that different to Spider-Man 3. That's not a bad thing either, since I thought the web swinging was good there too. In Web of Shadows, it still has a good flow to it, and I really like all of Spider-Man's acrobatic animations as he soars through the air. Unlike Spider-Man 3, there don't appear to be any animation differences between the suits, at least not that I spotted, but that's not really a complaint, just something I wanted to point out. So overall, the web swinging still feels good, it's just clear that it took a bit of a back seat in place of their grander gameplay ambitions, which I think is totally understandable. There's still some neat little traversal additions though, many of which I didn't even realize existed until my second or third playthrough. To start, Spider-Man can swing from all the poles scattered around the city. There's not much practical gameplay use for it, but it's really fun to do and feels smooth, and I'm surprised the game doesn't give you any kind of tutorial for it. Another feature I like is this ground leap you can perform if you jump as you touch the surface. It's great for maintaining momentum and moving across rooftops. There are some nice contextual animations when you're along a wall too, like the way you'll do a running slide as you descend, or the way Spider-Man will hold his hand out against a wall if you're alongside it while attached to a web line. Like in other games, you can still do some wall bouncing as needed as well, so there's some fun variety to the overall traversal. Once we arrive at the hospital, it's coincidentally right at the same moment a gang war breaks out at their front door. Happenstance or not, it gives us a good opportunity to play around with combat while switching suits. Even better though is that it introduces us to Luke Cage as he arrives on the scene to assist us.
It's Cage! Wasted!
Now that was rude.
If you're unfamiliar with the character, Luke Cage's origins began in Harlem, where he was born and raised. He and his friend, Willis Stryker, survived by committing petty crimes together until they reached adulthood, at which point Luke chose to leave crime behind him, while Willis only got deeper into it. Later, they both fell for the same woman, Reva Connors, but it was Willis who began a relationship with her first. It didn't take long for Reva to realize that a life with Willis would only lead to trouble, so she left him and began dating Luke. Willis was jealous and wanted revenge on Luke, so he planted drugs in his apartment, leading the police to falsely arrest Luke. He was then taken to Seagate Prison, where he was approached by Dr. Bernstein. The The doctor wanted Luke to be his subject in an experimental procedure he was conducting underneath the prison. Originally, Luke told him no, but reconsidered when he learned that Willis and Reva had gotten back together, and that Reva was killed shortly afterward when she was caught in the middle of another gang confrontation. Luke wanted revenge on Willis for putting her in that situation, so he agreed to the doctor's experiment. The process was successful, granting Luke superhuman strength and unbreakable skin. He then used those powers to break free from prison and make his way back to Harlem. On his way, he stopped a random mugging, and the would-be victim thanked him by giving him a cash reward. This gave Luke the idea that he could be paid for his deeds, so he soon decided to become a hero for hire and sport this outfit to showcase himself as a superhero. Luke will actually talk about this outfit with Spider-Man during a later conversation in the game.
So you were a kid? What's the excuse with that costume?
Why does everybody talk crap about my costume? It's a classic. It's iconic.
I was unaware that one of Iconic's definition was ugly as hell.
This coming from the man that used to run around in a yellow puffy shirt with the little silver tiara and his afro?
Man dressed like you right now don't get to talk about how I used to dress.
Still, you wore a tiara.
It was a headband. A headband.
I actually kind of dig the classic look with the tiara, headband, but I also really like his more casual style with just the yellow shirt, and I think his character model looks really good in this game. I must not be the only one, because it looks like his Web of Shadows model was also used in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, which is pretty cool. But as for Luke's heroic journey, he started his mission just looking for revenge against Willis Stryker, but later turned his focus to his neighborhood, becoming a hero for Harlem. So it's fitting to see Luke show up during this gang fight as we're currently in Harlem. It's pretty fun to watch him fight too, as his strength is really highlighted. He has a powerful shoulder charge ability, a really strong kick, and a ground slam for some AoE damage. Once we've stopped the gangs, we'll talk with Luke, who tells us to meet him in the park later. We do just that, and we're able to conversate with him a bit more. He asks us to help him mitigate the gang violence nearby, and he also offers some advice on how we could better utilize our abilities. He suggests that we use our spider sense to help get the drop on enemies, which we put into practice as we next attempt to save an informant who's about to get jumped. This acts as another brief tutorial where we learn to control our spider sense, which in this game essentially functions as our lock-on camera. This is an important feature since it not only helps orient the camera during all the frantic gameplay, but also highlights nearby enemies to help us scout them out in the open world. After completing this mission, we'll then return to Luke Cage, who gives us some optional side missions, like beating up more gang members or saving civilians. Just as a quick side note, I want to bring up something I thought was really funny related to saving civilians. In my first playthrough, I had trouble encountering civilians in need, so I wasn't sure how best to complete this objective. What I found online is that the best way to do it is to actually throw cars with the intent of injuring a civilian so that you can then take them to the hospital. The fact that you can do that in the game is unexpected but also kind of hilarious. Also, there's a really cool missable detail where if you're mid-air with a rescued civilian and decide to drop them for whatever reason, Spider-Man will attach a web parachute to them to glide them back down safely. Just be sure not to run into them afterwards because it'll immediately despawn the parachute, leaving them to plummet. Whoops. By the way, if a web parachute seems like a strange feature, it's actually comic accurate since Spider-Man has made one for himself a few times before. Going back to the main game, one thing I like about this early Luke Cage section is that although it's basically a prolonged tutorial section, I think the pacing at which the game teaches you its mechanics is very good. You'll learn one and then get a few opportunities to practice it. I also really like that the majority of these tutorial moments felt natural with the game's story and progression, to the point that I often didn't feel like I was in a tutorial, so I think these moments are really well done. I also really like Luke Cage's usage here, because he feels like another friendly neighborhood superhero type, but one that's also very experienced, making him a good fit as a coach in these early levels. One of the coolest interactions we have with Cage is when he offers to help us train our web strike ability, where we zip straight to an opponent for a quick attack. This is actually a surprisingly integral part of the combat, and we'll use it a lot more than I expected, so it makes sense that it would get this much attention. For example, there's the normal web strike where we just zip to an enemy and hit them. But to prevent things from being too easy, sometimes enemies can counter your web strike, shown by this glowing white aura. You can then either cancel the web strike and dodge away, or you can counter their counter to still land a hit. One funny detail during this training is that if you mess up during the first web strike phase, Luke will catch you and then pat your head like a puppy. This is in contrast to the counter section where he'll just punch you straight in the chest. After mastering this training, he'll also show us how to do chain strikes, zipping and striking from enemy to enemy. You'll see this a lot throughout my gameplay clips since it's both very useful but also required in multiple levels, potentially to the point of overuse, but we'll discuss it more later. The next mission Luke sends us on is to stop a drive-by shooting at a nearby gas station. We have to stop the cars, which we can do by either web striking them multiple times, which is the easiest and most reliable way, or by swing kicking the car, instantly knocking it out, which is harder to time but also much more satisfying to pull off. Swing kicking in general is a lot of fun in this game since it covers a wide range, allowing you to sweep multiple enemies at once like bowling pins. It actually brings me back to the Spider-Man 1 movie game's bowling mode, which I appreciate. After stopping the drive-by, I decided to investigate this gas station for a bit, and I was pleased to find some fun details. The first is that it's a Roxxon gas station, and Roxxon is an energy corporation in the comics that often gets involved in illegal activities. Roxxon also has some billboards around the city, but there are actually also a lot of much more interesting billboards around the open world that contain some fun comic references, which I'll dig into in the gameplay section. As far as this gas station, there are some fun signs on it. To start, there's a customer parking only sign, which starts with the typical text you'd expect until you get towards the bottom, which reads, "My spider sense is tingling," and "Parker, get in here." "My spider sense is tingling" is an iconic phrase from the comics, and "Parker, get in here" I assume is referencing J. Jonah Jameson when he yells at Peter to come into his office. As far as the other signs on the building, one on the front reads, "Win Bajillions," which I just thought was a funny lottery poster. There's also this vertical row of stickers that I think are meant to be based on real ones that show accepted card types, but I like that the middle one just says Larry. Another nearby sign reads, "We sell the Bugle 7 days a week," of course a reference to the Daily Bugle newspaper run by J. Jonah Jameson. Also to the left of it is a poster for Ugly Stick Jerked Beef, which does not sound appetizing at all. Then above the garage door is a sign for Excelsior Spark Plugs. Excelsior was a catchphrase commonly used by Stan Lee that quickly became associated with him. Why did he use it so much? Well, he actually answers this during a behind-the-scenes interview of the Fantastic Four game.
That's a funny thing, Excelsior. I used to write this column in all of the Marvel comics called Stan's Soapbox. And I also wrote a page called the Bullpen Bulletins page where I'd give news items about what we're doing and just rapping with the readers. And I would end all the columns, I signed Stan, and you don't want to just say Stan, and you don't want to say yours truly or sincerely yours, it sounds so stiff. So I'd end by saying hang loose, or face front, or enough said. Didn't matter what I signed those columns with, I noticed that the competition started using those expressions in their books. And I said to myself, I've got to think of something that they won't copy because one, they wouldn't know how to spell it, and two, they'd never know what it means. So I came up with the word Excelsior, which means upward and onward to greater glory.
From here, Peter gets a call from MJ after she leaves the hospital. I want to play their discussion regarding the symbiote suit because I think it's helpful in informing why MJ is against Peter using it.
I was so scared this morning. Venom was choking me and you weren't moving. Maybe that explains it.
Explains what? Explains you turning into that other thing? That other version of you?
You saw that?
Yes, I saw it. Tell me it's gone, Peter. Tell me you don't have that black suit again.
Well, it's complicated.
You have it, don't you? You know what that does to you. You know how it can change you.
You know, it actually worked for me. At first. Maybe this time it's different.
I don't believe you. Get rid of it, Peter. Get rid of it and then I'll talk to you.
Come on, MJ. Venom is out there still. I have a feeling that something's changed. That something about the suit is different.
Yeah? Well, I have a feeling everything will be the same. Get rid of it. It's not who you are. Find me when you are yourself again.
All right.
There are a couple of things I want to discuss about that conversation. First, it reminds us that this isn't Peter's first time wearing the black suit, and that he has a prior history with it. The game's story is an original one, but it's loosely basing things on the comics and other popular Spider-Man media. So let's talk a bit about the suit's comic origins and how it relates to the game. So unlike in the movies, Peter didn't receive the suit from an alien meteor. It was actually during the Secret Wars event where Peter and a bunch of other characters were sent to Battleworld to fight. After one of those fights, Spider-Man's suit was damaged and he wanted to get it repaired. Thor and Hulk tell him about a room they just found that contains a device that repairs suits, and that they just used it themselves. So Spider-Man follows their advice, but mistakenly uses the wrong alien device. What he actually used was a container housing the symbiote. Since the symbiote formed into a new outfit for him, Peter just assumed it made a color mistake, so he continued on. When he returned to Earth, he brought the suit with him, and it wasn't until later when he had Mr. Fantastic inspect it that he learned that it was actually a living alien. In the comics though, the suit didn't make him aggressive or change his emotions. Instead, it mainly just freaked him out. For example, it would give him bad nightmares and also take his body on joyrides, swinging through the city while he was sleeping. It was actually the 90s animated series that originated the idea that the suit made Peter aggressive, which the 2007 movie then adopted. Web of Shadows seems to be using a mixture of these origins, since we'll later learn that in the game's lore, Peter did bring the suit back from Battleworld like in the comics, but the suit also negatively impacts his aggression like in the animated series and movie. So even though we don't know specifics about why MJ doesn't like the suit, we at least know that it has a bad influence on him and that she's made it very clear that she doesn't want him to use it again. This forms a lot of conflict for Peter, since he hopes he can finally harness its power for good, while MJ recognizes this isn't realistic, and using the suit will only take him down a dark path. This conflict is passed on to the player, as we'll be given different choices throughout the game that dictate which suit we're most closely aligning ourselves with. We get our first example of one of these choices in the next section, where Luke attempts to organize a parlay between two rival gangs. While Luke plays mediator, Spider-Man is on the outside making sure nothing goes wrong. Of course, things do go wrong, as snipers flood the rooftops hoping for a shot. As Spider-Man, we put our web strike skills to the test and perform a really long series of chain strikes across the rooftop. In the process of defeating the snipers, Spider-Man notices hit photos that suggest that the gang war was a setup to take out the gang leaders. Back on the ground, Luke is having trouble getting the gang leaders to cooperate, and they ultimately decide against a parlay. At this moment, we're given our first story choice, with the options of choosing the red suit path or the black suit path. This is a cool feature, but one of my criticisms is that there's not much clarity to it. In this moment, I have no idea what choosing either option will make Spider-Man do. All I really know is that red suit equals good and black suit equals bad. I should also mention that collectively, your choices from these moments will decide your ending. There are 4 endings in total, and in order to experience them all, I did 2 different playthroughs, one where I picked all the red suit choices, and one where I went all black. I also did a third playthrough that was a bit more of a hybrid, so I'd have that experience too. For more context regarding the endings, we need to discuss the alignment system. The way it works is that the game tracks your choices to determine which suit you seem to be favoring most at that time. This is most heavily weighted based on the story decisions, but using each suit in combat also has a small effect. Your alignment also determines what characters want to help you throughout the game. For example, we only have Luke Cage as an ally right now, which means we can call him to help us in a fight. However, if our choices skew our alignment more towards the black suit, then Luke will no longer be willing to help us. So there's quite a lot going on with the different suit choices, and we'll discuss those in more depth as we progress. For now though, let's examine the differences between this first choice. If you choose the red path, Spider-Man will show the gang leaders the proof behind the setup, at which point the 2 of them will ultimately decide to parlay in order to stay alive. If you choose the dark path, you'll let another gang fight break out, leading to an additional combat section where you beat up all the gang members. Afterward, Luke is not happy with you.
The streets are gonna be safe, gentlemen.
What are you doing? This solves nothing!
Actually, Luke, this solves everything. These losers have been played. Somebody had their relatives murdered to start a nice turf war, and these 2 were more than willing to comply.
You knew this whole turf war was a setup?
You asked me to clean up the streets, and that's exactly what I did. Maybe they'll all share a cell.
Regardless of which path you choose, Spider-Man will deduce that since the snipers were all heavily armored, they must be well funded, which likely means that the Kingpin of crime, Wilson Fisk, could be the culprit. So Spidey decides to head to Kingpin's tower next. When he arrives, it's not Kingpin he encounters, but instead, Black Cat as she runs out of the building. I was a bit confused by this originally because it looks like she's fleeing the scene, but Spider-Man tells us here that she must be working for the Kingpin and heading out for her next mission. It wouldn't be a Spider-Man game without a Black Cat chase sequence, so we begin ours in an attempt for answers. Just like Spider-Man, she's able to effortlessly move from building to building thanks to her natural acrobatic ability as well as her hidden grappling hook. However, it might seem strange that she's making such giant leaps between rooftops, but there is a comic explanation. In the comic, she's given a suit crafted by the Tinkerer, which amplifies her strength and also contains razor-sharp claws. Her bio in the game confirms that she's using the Tinkerer's upgrades here, which is why she's so mobile. At the end of our chase though, Spider-Man witnesses something that really confuses him.
I must be seeing things. It can't be.
Seeing the glider in the distance makes him think he could be seeing old foes, like Green Goblin or Hobgoblin. He'll even name drop them as we fight the actual enemies, which are just Fisk henchmen with gliders.
You're not the Hobgoblin or the Green Goblin.
I also like that he name drops some other villains during this fight as a reference to the Sam Raimi movies.
Green Goblin is so 6 years ago. Come on, the kids, they like the Venom and the Sandman.
This is in reference to Green Goblin being the first movie's villain, while Sandman and Venom were the villains of the third movie, which was the most recent one at the time. They're all fun references to hear, but it also reaffirms that this is a more experienced Spider-Man who's faced these villains in his past already. The comic references don't end here, as the building we're fighting on belongs to the superhero Moon Knight, who Black Cat is attempting to rob. She soon flees the scene as Moon Knight himself arrives in his mooncopter.
There's only one of me, and there's like...
Drop the device at once.
Moon Knight? Hello?
Drop the device at once.
I was fighting the bad guys, didn't you see?
You were present at the robbery.
And trying to stop it. Now let's chase all the robbers.
You speak the truth to Khonshu. Let us pursue them.
I thought I was nuts.
I found it interesting that we're starting to get some very subtle cutscene differences depending on the suit you're wearing. For example, here's that cutscene again, with some very slight voiceover and animation differences for the black suit.
Bring it on! I don't care how many of you are...
Drop the device at once.
Moon Knight? Hello?
Drop the device at once.
I was fighting the bad guys, didn't you see?
You were present at the robbery.
And trying to stop it. Now let's chase all the robbers.
You speak the truth to Khonshu. Let us pursue them.
I thought I was nuts.
We should also talk about Moon Knight, and I'm sure many of you have questions about his moon-shaped aircraft. Well, it is indeed from the comics, and it's kind of like his version of Batman's Batwing. During their conversation, Moon Knight also mentions Khonshu, the Egyptian god of vengeance and the moon, who Moon Knight serves. It's kind of supernatural and crazy sounding, which is why Spider-Man comments on Moon Knight being nuts. To better explain Moon Knight, let's look at his origins. It begins with a man named Mark Spector who worked as a soldier for hire. He was hired by Raoul Bushman to help raid an archaeological site. However, Bushman was a ruthless man and ended up killing the lead archaeologist in hopes of furthering his goals. Mark didn't like that and attacked Bushman himself. Bushman won the fight though, leaving Mark for dead in the desert. He was soon found by some locals who brought him to the statue of Khonshu, but he was already dead. Luckily for Mark, he was then revived by Khonshu under the deal that Mark would serve as his avatar on Earth. Mark took the offer and returned to New York while also adopting two other personalities, Stephen Grant, a wealthy investor, and Jake Lockley, a cab driver who's good at learning secrets. Using those identities, along with his Moon Knight persona, he protects New York City as a vigilante. It's a really nice surprise to see Moon Knight make an appearance here, especially when you consider his limited popularity at the time. Nowadays, Moon Knight is more recognizable thanks to the MCU and Marvel rivals, but back then he wouldn't have been too well known. His only other gaming appearance prior to this was as a next-gen exclusive character in Ultimate Alliance 1, so again, not too far-reaching. He's always been an in-demand character amongst fans though, so I think it was a great choice to include him here, and I'm glad that Shaba were willing to pull from some lesser-known characters instead of just the more popular ones. He fits nicely in a Spider-Man game too, since in the comics, they've appeared together in multiple team-up issues. Going back to the story, Spider-Man will continue his pursuit of Black Cat, although Moon Knight will be non-existent for the rest of this mission. I guess he's tending to his building at the moment, I don't know. But we'll ultimately track down Black Cat and fight amongst various rooftops for a pretty lengthy battle that lasts for 3 phases. She's a great boss fight though, matching Spider-Man's agility with her acrobatic skills, as well as range with her suit's grappling hook. What I appreciate most though is that her fight is a good display of the traversal-based combat as you naturally move from the air to the side of the building, as well as back onto the rooftop during the course of the fight, probably without even realizing you're doing it. It's really smooth, and it feels like a Spider-Man fight you'd find in the comics. In fact, I think Black Cat's fights are the best showcase of what this combat system has to offer, and it's a lot of fun. In a moment, I also want to discuss Black Cat and Peter's relationship history because I think it's implied that they've dated before, since throughout the course of the fight, Black Cat will banter a lot through flirting and plenty of sexual innuendo, and even has quite sexual sounding damage grunts, which I assume was an intentional creative choice to reinforce that attraction.
Hello, lover. Isn't it a beautiful night?
No flirting. Just tell me what you stole.
Oh, this? Come and get it. You want to know what I want? I want you, Spider-Man.
Oh, what's the matter? You know how to give it, but you don't know how to take it? I know that hurt. Don't make me do that again.
I'll make you do it all night, lover.
Well,
You never know what this might lead to.
No, I think you love it more.
Only one way you'll ever find out. Come on. I can never get enough of my little Spidey man.
So even though it's not explicitly stated, I think it's safe to assume that they've already dated in the game's continuity and broken up, like they did in the comics, but more on that in a moment. For now, once we beat up Black Cat enough, we'll get a private moment to talk with her, which surprisingly begins a QuickTime event. The QuickTime fail screens aren't quite as bad as the Spider-Man 3 ones we watched in that video, but they're still unintentionally funny at times, and even kind of surprising, like this one where you actually kill Black Cat.
Are you okay? I told you to lay off.
When you do it successfully, you'll still accidentally knock her off the side of the building, but you'll catch her, which leads to a romantic swing through, oh, never mind. Well, this leaves Peter on the street, and Black Cat nowhere to be found. Presumably, due to their prior relationship, Peter knows where she lives, so we head to her penthouse next in hopes of finding her.
Felicia, you in there? Here, kitty, kitty, kitty.
I'm right here, you idiot.
So, are you okay? I'm not sure what's going on.
Look, I'm a screw-up, okay?
You think? You do a heist for Kingpin, try to kill me.
I was working from the inside. I got in over my head and I couldn't get out of it, and then you show up way too early and I get this huge rush from seeing you.
You attacked me. And what do you mean I showed up early?
I was doing it for you. So you would see that we were made for each other.
Ooh. I'm sorry. I had no idea you still felt like that.
Really? Well, guess what? I do. I still love you. Look at us, wearing these stupid masks. Who are we really? We have all these powers and act like we're ashamed of them. Be with me. Together we can be whatever we want. Free from want, free from responsibility, free to have fun. You do like fun, don't you?
Yes. I mean, so yeah, the player is now given an early choice to either embrace Black Cat or stay loyal to MJ. If you choose the red path, you'll deny Black Cat and swing away, leaving her quite pissed off. If you choose the dark path, Peter will instead agree to embrace Black Cat and her ideas.
You're right. I could use a little more fun in my life.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I promise you this whole city is yours.
Really?
Yep. And I know just who to take it from.
Big guy wearing a cravat?
That's right.
This choice will alter a few aspects of the game temporarily, but more specifically, who you partner up with during this section. Sticking with the dark path, you'll remain here with Black Cat, who will now be your quest giver. You can now talk with her, and she'll suggest you target Kingpin. You can also have a more personal conversation with her regarding her distaste for his Peter Parker life.
How do you do it? Go back to being just plain old Peter Parker, I mean.
What?
You're out here in the costume swinging around and you're amazing, spectacular, ultimate Spider-Man. But you go home at night and you take off the super duds and you're just Peter Parker.
Do you have any idea how bad I'd smell if I never took off this costume?
I think you're missing my point.
Cat, it should be obvious by now that I'm missing your point.
When you do what you need to do as Spidey, you go back to pretending to be normal instead of being who you are.
Are Peter Parker?
No, you are Spider-Man. Remember that. You deserve a new and better life.
You actually sound a bit crazier than usual right now, Cat.
You'll understand what I mean someday. You'll see.
You're asking me to leave everything behind and just be Spider-Man.
This goes back to the comics where Black Cat felt the same way, loving Spider-Man but not Peter Parker. She didn't understand why he would put so much focus on his boring personal life when he could have so much more by embracing his Spider-Man life. In fact, when Peter finally felt comfortable enough to reveal his secret identity to her, the moment she saw his face, she reacted in horror, opting for Peter to keep the mask on. Ouch. So naturally, it wasn't long before Peter and Black Cat broke up. As far as the game, whether or not Peter will agree with Cat and embrace that lifestyle is something that the player will get to choose for him over the course of the story. From here though, if you chose the red path, you'll leave Black Cat and we won't see her again for a while. Instead, we'll head back to Moon Knight, who is now out of his copter and fully suited up. Like Black Cat, we can talk with him, and he'll suggest that we target Kingpin as well. So regardless of which character becomes your quest giver, they essentially give you the same missions, just in their own way. However, there are also character-specific, optional conversations that you can have with them. In this case, you can ask Moon Knight about Khonshu.
I serve Khonshu.
Oh, well that makes more sense. Thanks for clearing it up.
Khonshu is a god of the moon, a taker of vengeance.
And Khonshu hooks you up with all your toys?
Khonshu guides me, allows me to exact vengeance on those deserving.
Interesting. In a totally, psychotic kind of way.
Regardless of your choice, you'll also unlock both Moon Knight and Black Cat as allies, which by the way is another really cool feature in this game. If during a fight you get overwhelmed and you want some assistance, you can call in one of your available allies. They'll fight alongside you for a limited amount of time, and each one has their own unique style and animations. We unlocked Luke Cage earlier, and as we saw, he's a very powerful melee fighter and a great starting ally. Now we have Moon Knight and Black Cat too. Starting with Moon Knight, he has a good mix of melee and ranged attacks, like some small melee combos and dashes, while also throwing crescent darts at distant enemies. If you're unfamiliar with those, think Batman's Batarangs. I also caught him doing a couple cool additional animations as well. The first is performing a handspring over this car, and I actually saw Luke do the same but with his own unique animations, so I like that attention to detail. Going back to Moon Knight, the other animation is my favorite, and it was this cocky head shake that he does to this enemy after stunning them. I only saw him do it this one time, even throughout multiple playthroughs, which is a shame because it's so funny and I love it. Then there's Black Cat, who's also quite well rounded. She'll use her grappling hook and acrobatic strikes to fight enemies, so I found her to be pretty effective when used. She can even fight alongside us on walls, something Moon Knight and Luke Cage can't do, so that's a nice advantage to her as well. The kicker regarding allies is that you can only summon characters who agree with your current suit alignment. So for example, Luke Cage and Moon Knight can only be called in if you're aligned with the red suit, while Black Cat can only be summoned if you're aligned with the black suit. I actually liked this lair quite a bit though, because it made it feel like my story choices had a meaningful impact on my gameplay, without restricting me too much in the process. The black suit allies have the better variety, but ultimately, allies in general won't make or break your game. In fact, I really just called in characters for the fun of it and not out of necessity, so you won't feel like you're missing out on anything too significant regardless of the suit path you take, which I think is a good thing since you can still get the exclusivity of different characters but without the feeling of losing out. Going back to the story, after doing a few missions for either Black Cat or Moon Knight, they'll suggest you look into a secret base that they've uncovered, which could be related to Kingpin. If you speak with Black Cat, she has an optional conversation regarding working for Kingpin and her struggled attempts at trying to be a superhero.
I was having one of my I wish I was a superhero days.
Which is better than one of your I think I'll steal the Hope Diamond days, huh?
Glad you think so, because I usually end up feeling like a loser after I try the super stuff.
Nah, you do okay.
I do?
Sometimes, yeah.
Uh-huh. Name one.
That one time, you did pretty good. Saving my life, or somebody's life, or something.
You're a terrible liar.
I thought that was interesting because both her struggles to be a hero and her association with the Kingpin fall in line with the comics in a similar but different way. So when they first started dating, Black Cat didn't have any superpowers, but she'd still team up with Spider-Man to fight superhuman criminals. She was of course at a huge disadvantage in these fights, and it made her a liability for Spider-Man. He would often have to spend valuable time protecting her, which the villains took advantage of to escape, when they otherwise would have been caught. Black Cat was aware of this and wanted to fix things, so she started to seek out people who could give her powers, such as the Fantastic Four and the Avengers, who all turned her away. However, one mysterious benefactor still offered to give her powers. She didn't know who the individual was, but she was desperate enough to agree. The result was that she did indeed get powers, bad luck powers to be exact, and the way it worked was that anyone against her in a fight would suddenly have bad luck, giving her an edge. With her new abilities, she was able to team up with Spider-Man again, but she kept all the details of her powers' origins a secret to him. The powers came at a deeper cost than she initially realized though, as the mysterious benefactor was actually the Kingpin. He secretly knew that her powers would also affect anyone she spends a lot of time in close proximity to, namely Spider-Man. So unbeknownst to either of them, her bad luck began to affect him progressively more over time, for example making him forget how to shoot webs mid-fall. So Kingpin's goal for giving her powers was to ultimately kill Spider-Man in the process. So not identical to the game, but Black Cat dealing with Kingpin and having flawed attempts at being a hero feels in line with the comics. Going back to the game, we'll next investigate the secret base, and inside we find another noteworthy character, the Vulture. Vulture has been the one creating all the high-tech weapons and armor for Kingpin's henchmen, and he's not too happy that we walked in on him. He immediately summons his wings, which are magnetized blades, and he takes us outside to initiate our next boss fight. Aerial fights in Spider-Man games are often some of my favorites, since they take Spider-Man to the skies, forcing you to not only focus on your combat, but also your web swinging to stay close to the fight. This one is no different, as you'll be utilizing your web strike ability frequently to close the distance on Vulture. In fact, I found it interesting that this boss fight kind of serves as another subtle practice run for your web strike with the amount of times it forces you to do the chain combo with it. There are about 5 phases to this fight, and for 3 of them, it throws you back onto the rooftop where you have to zip from enemy to enemy to reach Vulture. It's a bit redundant having to perform the web strike this much again, but I think that Shaba did a good job mitigating those feelings of tedium by incorporating trick moves. The way it works is that there's a timing element involved. Normally, once you reach an enemy, you'll press another button as you reach them to successfully hit them. If you perfectly time that interaction, you'll instead trigger a more powerful attack. As you upgrade your web strike, this perfect timing will allow you to add multiple button presses onto it to chain trick maneuvers together, where you're essentially using the enemy like a skateboard. This surely goes back to Shaba's prior experience with extreme sports games, and although it initially seemed like kind of a strange mechanic to me, I grew to enjoy it as the game progressed. I think at first I thought of it like Spider-Man trying to be a skater, and although he appeared in the Tony Hawk games, it's not something I associate with him. Over time though, I realized it's more like Spider-Man showing off with his web abilities. Plus, with his knack for taunting enemies, flipping and throwing them around like a yo-yo for an extended period of time certainly felt disrespectful. In the black suit, it functions a bit differently, since instead of performing tricks, you'll surf on them while attempting to run over others. It's simpler, but it still maintains a good level of interactiveness. Since we'll be performing so many web strikes to get close to Vulture, we'll have plenty of opportunity to practice flipping him around here too. Overall, this fight on the surface is kind of rinse and repeat, where you zip to Vulture and then do some melee strikes mid-air. However, I was surprised to find that since the fight feels so cinematic and fluid, it didn't become tedious. I think it also helps that it's just really cool fighting Vulture out in the open city with the freedom to roam anywhere. So ultimately, I enjoyed this fight quite a bit, but primarily for the thematics. As the last phase of fighting Vulture, we get another quick time event to close it out. The fail screens aren't too crazy this time around. Either Vulture will pin you to the wall with blades, or you'll get some kind of variation of him sending Spider-Man plummeting towards the pavement.
Whoa!
The end result, when successful, is you instead crash Vulture into the pavement and then make another suit path decision. If you pick red, Spider-Man will web Vulture onto a Cronus Corp billboard and leave him for the police. By the way, Cronus Corp is the building we just fought Vulture on, and it's another comic reference. Within the Winter Soldier arc of the 2005 Captain America series, Cronus Corp was a Russian business run by a man named Alexander Lukin. Lukin had claimed possession of a cosmic cube, which in the comics can essentially be thought of as a wish granter. Using the cube, Lukin was able to force other business owners to let Cronus Corp acquire them, and he also used the Winter Soldier as his operative. But going back to the game, if you pick the dark path, Spider-Man will instead recruit Vulture to his side.
Okay, Buzzard Breath. Merry Christmas. Now you owe me one. Cross me again, I'll do more than take your wings.
Of course! You won't regret this, I swear.
If you're aligned with the symbiote suit, Vulture will now be an ally that you can call in for help. I actually found him to be a fun one to use too. Since he can fly, he's helpful against all enemy types, and it's fun watching him relentlessly rain blade projectiles down onto enemies. Earlier, I mentioned that you're not really missing much between allies when choosing the red or black suit alignment, but Vulture is probably the most significant difference since the red path doesn't have a flying ally. But shortly after our Vulture boss fight, Spider-Man will continue his pursuit of Kingpin by investigating a rooftop staging area when, oh god.
This one. This is bad. Really bad.
Not only is this a surprising turn of events, but these crawling humans look super creepy and weird, and I mean that as a compliment for whoever designed them. From here, we'll fight both Fisk's men and the deranged civilians. At the end of the fight, no matter which suit you're aligned with, Spider-Man's solution will be to throw them off the roof.
Spider-Man, stand down! Freeze! Back away from those people now, mister!
No, you don't understand. They attacked me. They're not normal. They might... I get attacked and then I get shot at. How's that fair?
I thought it was interesting how Spider-Man will have slightly different voiceover if you're on the dark path here.
Hey, These lunatics attacked me! They're obviously not normal human beings! The whole world's gone nuts!
Somewhere, J. Jonah Jameson is loving the news that Spider-Man has been throwing people off rooftops. Other characters won't be so pleased though. On the Red Path, when you return to Moon Knight, he'll voice his concern.
I warn you only once. Do not behave this way again.
Even Black Cat will be annoyed at how you handled the situation.
Well, you've done it now.
What's that?
The cops are after you.
They are? For what?
Throwing people off a rooftop? The NYPD doesn't take too well to things like that.
Her annoyance won't last long, as she quite quickly flips back around to flirting, including commenting on your black suit.
What's on your mind?
Oh, just thinking how good we look in black.
You like?
I like a lot.
This is actually a nod to the comics as well, since Black Cat loved the symbiote suit there too. So much so that after Peter ditched the symbiote, she went to the effort of making him a non-alien cloth version of it because she thought he looked sexier in it. Peter then wore that cloth version of the black suit for multiple issues afterward. Our next mission is to further investigate Hell's Kitchen regarding the deranged civilians. However, this investigation is soon interrupted by another new character introduction.
I've got the feeling that someone... nasty!
Definitely not the most graceful Wolverine entrance, but it at least means my rival's gameplay as him is lore accurate now. Back on the ground, we learn why Wolverine attacked us.
And it's nice to see you too, Logan.
You sound as irritating as Spider-Man, but you don't smell right. You're one of them.
One of who? One of... Wait, you can smell the...
Yeah, and you're one of them, bub.
I really like this detail that Wolverine can smell the symbiote. We discussed this a bit in my Wolverine's Revenge video, but an often overlooked superpower of Logan's is his heightened sense of smell, and it's what makes him such a great tracker. I also really like the suit Wolverine's wearing here, as it appears to be his astonishing X-Men look, which would have been his current suit in the comics. It's one of my favorites in general, so I was really happy to see it here. Outside of Wolverine's usage, I have to wonder if at some point Shaba was debating on using Daredevil here instead. It's curious that we encounter Wolverine in Hell's Kitchen of all places, which is Daredevil's home turf, and Daredevil has heightened senses as well, so he would have been able to sense the symbiote too. This is mostly just my speculation, however there are a couple findings that suggest Shaba wanted Daredevil early on in development. To start, Twitter user Treyarch Spidey found this old opening animatic in the game files which shows a modeled Daredevil. In the playable milestone build we looked at earlier, there's also this mock-up objective screen that has some fake missions within it. This one, taking place in Hell's Kitchen, reads, "Team up with Daredevil to take down the guy you can't beat by yourself." I'm unsure why Shaba ultimately didn't use Daredevil, perhaps they couldn't get him approved, but I'm at least happy to see that they attempted it because I think he would have been a natural fit for this game, especially with how often they interact in the comics. There are a couple references to him in the game still, and one of them can be spotted if you get close to the newsstands in the open world. One of the magazines on display is for Superhero Digest, and it features the face of Daredevil on the cover. Going back to the story, Wolverine isn't quite convinced that we're ourselves, so he decides to fight first and ask questions later. Quite literally actually, because interestingly enough, each phase of this boss fight is interrupted with a trivia question from Wolverine based on their comic history together.
What are your parents' names?
Each question is multiple choice, and your goal, if on the Red Path, is to convince Wolverine that you're Peter Parker by answering the questions correctly. This is easier said than done because some of the questions are pretty obscure comic details that even avid fans might not know. We start off fairly easy with the question of your parents' names, although that could be a bit of a trick question itself since you may instinctively select Ben and May, who are Peter's adopted parents but not biological.
Ben and May. Oh, you said parents. This is gonna hurt.
Wrong answer.
The real answer is Richard and Mary, and they're Peter's birth parents who died in a plane crash when Peter was young. If you answer correctly, you'll get red suit points, although Wolverine will continue to attack you as he's still unconvinced. If you answer incorrectly, either unintentionally or to taunt Wolverine, you'll receive black suit points. An interesting detail is that if you just answer a question wrong, you'll still receive black suit points, but not as many compared to picking the option that ignores his question, intentionally taunting him to fight even further. For example, getting a question wrong may result in 5 or 8 black points, while telling him to just shut up and fight will result in 12. So I like that the point system is both less punishing for players that accidentally get a question wrong, while also further boosting someone who's role-playing that more aggressive black suit personality. Another thing I like about these questions is that they're all based on things Wolverine would know in the comics, typically based on various team-ups with Spider-Man. So let's look at all of Wolverine's questions and their comic basis. The next one is, whose killers did we track in Berlin? The answer is Ned Leeds, and this is from a comic titled Wolverine vs. Spider-Man. In it, both Wolverine and Spider-Man end up in Berlin due to separate reasons. Peter was requested by Jameson to accompany Ned Leeds on a story there when Ned uncovered evidence of Russian spies being killed by someone named Charlemagne. Wolverine, on the other hand, is also looking for Charlemagne, but as an old friend. Both Spider-Man and Wolverine are too late though, as Peter finds Ned Leeds dead in their hotel early into their trip. I also thought Spider-Man's response to one of the wrong answers was kind of interesting, and it's if you select Harry Osborn.
That's where Harry died, I think. Bad friend.
You're not funny.
We talk about it in more detail in my Spider-Man 3 retrospective, but Harry did die in the comics. At one point, he takes up the Green Goblin mantle after his father and vows to kill Peter. During one of those attempts, he places a bomb in a house where they're fighting. He likely would have successfully killed Peter here, but Harry has a change of heart when he realizes that MJ, along with his son Normie, have entered the house as well. So at the last minute, he flies everyone, including Peter, to safety. After saving Peter, Harry then convulses and dies due to an experimental goblin serum he had been using. So it seems in the game's lore, Harry is also dead, potentially in a similar fashion, although I don't believe we get any further details. Wolverine's next question is something we discussed earlier, and the question is, where did Spider-Man first wear the black suit? This was of course Battle World in the Secret Wars event, which Wolverine was also present for. I thought a couple of Peter's other responses were funny too though.
The shower. And how would you know that?
Don't push me, bub.
At Tony Stark's Halloween extravaganza.
Don't push me, bub.
Wolverine's fourth question is, who declined joining the New Avengers? This is in reference to the 2005 New Avengers comic series written by Brian Michael Bendis. Prior to that series, the Avengers had disbanded. However, after a prison break orchestrated by the villain Electro, Captain America realizes it's time to put a new Avengers team in place. It features a new roster of heroes, some of which are relevant to Web of Shadows, such as Spider-Man and Luke Cage, while Wolverine joined the team a few issues later in the series. To answer Wolverine's question, the character that declined the invitation was Daredevil. Despite Captain America personally asking him to join, Daredevil declined because he felt he'd be too much of a liability to a team. He felt this way because his secret identity had recently been revealed, and if he was convicted of being Daredevil, then all the criminals he legally put in jail could then be set free. So Daredevil was nervous that being on a team with all that heat on him could eventually destroy any potential good work the Avengers accomplished. That new Avengers series is actually very good and well written, so I'd recommend checking it out if you haven't, and I'll have some links in the description and within the YouTube shop, along with some other stuff I thought was cool. The fifth question asked is, what is critical mass? This one is really obscure and a bit of a trick question because it really should be, who is critical mass? The correct answer is a mutant, and he's this blob-looking character with tiny hands dressed in purple who has the ability to shoot energy blasts. He appears in a Spider-Man and Wolverine team-up comic, along with his villain group that he calls his Band of Baddies. They all wear yoga pants and, just kidding. They don't really consist of anyone noteworthy, and this is the only appearance of critical mass based on what I've seen. So I think that's one of the trickier questions Wolverine asks you. However, whether you know the answer or not, it's equally hard to resist answering with Kingpin, because that's just way too good of a setup.
Describes Kingpin pretty well.
You're a real wise guy.
Also, if you answer a video game, Peter will name drop Activision.
Didn't Activision publish that one?
You're getting nowhere.
Activision is of course the publisher of Web of Shadows, but it doesn't look like they ever published a critical mass video game. From what I found online, there was one back in 1985, but it was published by Durrell Software. This last question is also a bit of an obscure one, and it's who served us roast and pie? You could probably guess it based on the multiple choice options alone, but the correct answer is Aunt May. This occurred in another Spider-Man and Wolverine team-up series, and if I'm being completely honest with you all, it's one that I do not recommend reading. It's just not very good. I found the writing to be dated, cheesy, and kinda clumsy. Then there's the artwork, which features some really odd and inconsistent facial illustrations. I know there are probably some of you that are even more intrigued by it now after I didn't recommend it, so if you're feeling both curious and brave, I'll still leave it linked in the description, and it's also available on Marvel Unlimited. Overall, it's a bit of a strange one, but it includes the moment where Peter and Wolverine eat roast and pie with Aunt May, which is the basis for Wolverine's question in the game. Before looking at the end result of this mission, I want to talk about the gameplay of the boss fight itself, because it's actually pretty awesome. You expect a clash between Spider-Man and Wolverine to feel epic, and this didn't disappoint. Wolverine is a really aggressive fighter with a strong variety of attacks to keep you guessing, as well as some great animations that demonstrate his melee skills. I think one of the things I enjoyed most about this fight is that, even after multiple playthroughs, it never felt too one-sided. Wolverine will counter and follow up attacks, leading to a lot of great back and forth between the two of you, which felt very cinematic. I also really like the location of this fight. It's not very visually exciting, but conceptually it works quite well. It's confined enough to feel tight and close quarters, like a cage match, but also open enough to allow a lot of free movement, especially with all the walls surrounding you, allowing you to take the fight alongside them, which Wolverine manages by stabbing his claws into it and running. So there's a lot of freedom with how you approach this fight, and it's very fast paced as you adapt to Wolverine's aggressive fighting style. I thought this boss fight in particular was really well executed, and it's easily amongst my favorites in the entire game. Another detail I like about it is about halfway through when more deranged civilians enter the battle. Wolverine disengages from fighting you to deal with them, so it's up to you as the player to either act as an ally and solely focus on the civilians, or to act as an aggressor and hit Wolverine while he's distracted. The game rewards these choices accordingly by giving you red suit points for beating up the civilians, or giving black suit points for targeting Wolverine. It looks like you even get 3 black suit points periodically if Wolverine takes damage, since you're not actively protecting him, maybe even purposefully letting him get hit without backup. So I thought it was really cool that this system actively attempts to assess your intentions moment to moment to properly boost your alignment. I also like that it's an unprompted decision for the player, since it's only after you perform an action, in this case either acting honorably by assisting Wolverine, or aggressively through tunneling him, that you see the associated reward pop up, with no indication that you're being judged ahead of time. It wasn't always perfect, but it felt like the game was reading my mind for a moment, which was a really cool surprise. Ultimately, those combat choices, along with how you answered each question, will adjust the suit meter. If you're mostly red, you'll convince Wolverine that you're still Spider-Man, leading to this cutscene.
Okay, yeah. You're not just irritating. You are Spider-Man.
Glad we could figure that out without gutting me.
If that thing gets control over you, gutting is still an option. Got me?
If your meter is mostly black, you'll see this cutscene instead.
We can keep doing this, or you can help me.
I don't know how you're doing it, but I guess you can control this parasite. Use it.
Just help me recognize him. I can't tell if someone's infected or not.
All right, I'll try. But you're playing with fire, kid. That thing gets control of you, it's over.
As suggested, we'll now team up with Wolverine briefly, regardless of your suit alignment. He'll use his senses to sniff out contaminated civilians in the area, at which point we use our spider sense, which can now be used to trigger civilians into entering their deranged state. It's a pretty neat mechanic, since civilians will appear to be totally normal around you, only to suddenly become enraged and attack you. After defeating a bunch of them, we'll debrief with Wolverine, who will now act as a quest giver, while also being available as an ally to call into gameplay, if you're aligned with the red suit path. He's a pretty solid one to use too, as his scrappy nature helps keep the pressure up on enemies, so he was one of my favorites to call in. I also thought one of their optional conversations was fun, where he mentions another one of his outfits.
So, what are your thoughts on the new duds?
This some kind of damn superhero fashion show. 'Cause I got some orange and brown tights that put you to shame.
He's totally right. This orange and brown suit is from the comics, and it's easily one of his best looks. Wolverine then goes on to date both himself and this game by referencing the relevant social media softwares back then.
First off, you smell like death. Second, you look like one of those emo kitties they got all over the internet gibbering on about how hard their life is when they've never even known true pain.
Oh my god, you have a My Face page, don't you? Dork.
I do not.
Ah, you totally do.
Shut up, kid.
Will you add me as a friend? I'll poke you, you poke me back.
I said shut up!
My Face, as Spider-Man calls it, is of course a nod back to MySpace and Facebook. Also, for those of you that weren't around for that social media era, Spider-Man also references sending a poke, which was a Facebook feature, and back then it was essentially the equivalent of sending a wink face emoji to someone you're interested in. God, I feel old. Moving on, Wolverine and Spider-Man agree that hunting down Venom is the next best course of action, so we set off to find him. It won't take long, as Spider-Man soon happens upon Venom as he uses his symbiote to corrupt more civilians. Peter will also find a symbiote pod that Venom uses to produce symbiote minions.
Gross.
Parker, you took away part of us, but that just made us stronger. We should grow.
Eddie, that's not right.
Eddie. We don't listen to Eddie.
That purple token spawned right in front of the camera on each of my playthroughs, so sorry about that. But anyway, this moment introduces us to a couple new enemy types, the symbiote pod itself, which can actually be quite damaging, as well as symbiote civilians. This is also a boss fight against Venom, where we have to destroy the pod before we can damage him. Overall, I thought it was a pretty solid fight. It's challenging trying to juggle all the minions and Venom while also trying to focus the pod. Venom himself is a tough opponent too. Each of his hits felt like they landed with a lot of power, and I noticed he was depleting my health much faster than the other bosses, so I felt a lot of pressure to block and not play too carelessly against him. That's not a bad thing, as this degree of difficulty felt fitting for what you'd expect from a Venom fight. I also enjoyed the thematics of taking the fight to the wall and battling him there too. Using the different suits against him felt fun in their own way as well. I think I had an easier time fighting him in the red suit, just because those combos were more fast and agile. But using the symbiote suit against Venom felt really satisfying too, not only because it's so powerful, but also because I was using his own suit against him. On a side note, this probably wasn't an intentional Easter egg, but this back alley fight location reminded me a lot of the similar one in Spider-Man PS1. Intentional or not, I think it's a fun tie. Once we defeat Venom here, he'll scamper away up a wall and flee, suggesting this won't be the last we see of him. The damage is already done though, as Venom's pods are now scattered all over the city alongside his minions. We'll spend some time destroying what we can, but it's clear they're spreading to an overwhelming degree. At this point, the government agency S.H.I.E.L.D. shows up to start quarantining affected individuals. Spider-Man heads to one of the quarantine zones to investigate, but we're not the only one.
What are you doing? You've got infected people in the crowd.
We have orders to detain.
They have alien parasites.
Spider-Man, you are under arrest.
Black Widow? Me? What did I do?
Spider-Man, you are wanted.
Where is she? Why did you take her?
We'll talk about that Black Widow reveal in a moment, since instead, our focus shifts entirely to Electro, which by the way, I just want to take a moment and compliment how cool this suit design looks. It nicely resembles his classic suit from the comics, but I like how rough and scuffed up it looks here. It's clear he's been through the ringer, which I think not only looks cool and gives the suit some personality, but it also matches his frazzled mental state at this moment, which we'll discuss shortly. From here, we chase him through the city. This is essentially his boss fight, as we'll repeatedly catch up to him and fight him for a bit before he zips off to the next location. Along the way, he'll also lay out electrical hazards that we have to avoid, so I like that this is also a bit of a skill test for your traversal. As the chase progresses, these traps will become more elaborate, so it'll get harder to dodge them while pursuing Electro. Compared to other Electro chase sequences in Spider-Man games, I actually enjoyed this one quite a lot. I like that his traps were intricate enough to influence how I moved around the city or attempted to reach him, but not to the point they ever became frustrating. I also enjoyed the brief combat encounters within it, since it was satisfying to finally catch up to him and deal some damage, but not too easy since he was still capable of countering my attacks. So I think this ended up being my favorite of the Electro sequences that we've covered on the channel. As we continue our pursuit, he'll lead us to other S.H.I.E.L.D. quarantine zones around the city, making it obvious that he's targeting them specifically, although it's not entirely clear why yet. Eventually, the chase brings us to a power grid, where Electro aims to charge himself up. Instead of a straight-up fight, this will begin another QuickTime event. There aren't really any interesting fail screens here, so I'll just jump to the successful one, which sees Spider-Man leap from generator to generator as Electro fires blasts at him. I'm not a fan of QuickTime events, but I at least enjoyed that this one showcased Spider-Man's ability to outthink his opponents, in this case, tricking Electro into destroying his own power sources one by one. The result is that Electro is viciously blasted across town, dazing him. He's still not down for the count though, as he gets back up, ready for another fight. Surprisingly, he's then shot by someone off screen, that person being Black Widow, landing the final blow. I should mention that he was grunting after being shot, so I don't think we're meant to believe he's dead here. Regardless, while Spider-Man and Black Widow argue the ethics of shooting Electro, a woman from the quarantine zone is attempting to reach him, claiming to be his sister. Just to pause for a moment, in case anyone's curious, from what I could find in the comics, I don't believe he's ever had a sister, making this an original creation for the game. From what I've read, he appears to be an only child in the comics. But anyway, his sister then leaps onto him, transferring her symbiote, bringing him back as Symbiote Electro. He fully charges himself, and then detonates a giant blast, covering his escape. As Spider-Man recovers, Black Widow makes it clear she isn't happy.
You are under arrest.
Nothing comes of that though, as we immediately jump back into free roaming the city. I guess we're to assume that Spider-Man just leapt away from the scene, I'm not sure. Regardless, we soon get a phone call from MJ who informs us that the city itself is fully under quarantine now, as S.H.I.E.L.D. has closed all bridge and tunnel access. So Spider-Man decides to head to one of the bridges to inquire further. When we arrive, we find that Kingpin is in the process of trying to talk his way into leaving.
As a citizen of New York, I demand you open this bridge.
I have orders, sir. Manhattan is under quarantine.
See, Kingy, the bridge isn't rated to handle your weight, and...
I know exactly what's going on here. Tell me, how is your little alien companion? I plan to retire to my country estate. Step aside.
Is the Kingpin actually scared?
Where are all the good guys? Where's Richards? Stark? Some so-called genius that will get rid of these things. Too bad all the mad scientists are in lockdown at Rikers. Maybe I was leaving prematurely. Let's go, everybody, we're going back!
Come to think of it, where are Richards and Stark?
I like this cutscene since it shows Kingpin's tact in manipulating people. He sees some kind of opportunity present itself, so he leaves a small, offhand comment to get in Peter's head, which plants a seed of an idea into his mind that will only grow over the next few moments, as we next see him calling any genius superhero that he can think of.
I'll try Richards first.
You've reached the headquarters of the Fantastic Four.
Read Richards, please.
For analytic data systems, press 1. For the arms reduction project,
What about 4?
press 2.
Isn't fantastic?
For Mr. Fantastic, press 1.
Yes!
This is the office of Dr. Richards. He is away on urgent business in another star system. Please leave a message. Mailbox full.
Ah, fine. I'll try Stark.
You have reached Stark Tower.
0. Operator.
Due to a public health emergency, Stark Industries is closed.
Who am I kidding? If he could be here, he would be. Maybe Hank McCoy.
Your call cannot be completed as dialed. All circuits are busy.
Henry Pym? Forget it.
So some fun references there. Of course, there's Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four, then Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. The last two people Peter tries to call are Hank McCoy, aka Beast of the X-Men, and then Henry Pym, the original Ant-Man, who in the comics was going by Yellow Jacket at the time. It's unclear where everyone is at this moment, although Reed's voice machine states that he's in another star system. That's probably legit because he and the Fantastic Four regularly get into trouble all over the universe, and even other universes for that matter. We don't receive any specifics regarding the whereabouts of the other characters Peter called either, and I think it's intentionally left obscure. However, if I were to speculate a bit about Tony Stark, I would maybe guess that he's in Washington, D.C. at the moment. The reason for this is that there's a billboard in the city that suggests the Civil War event is on the horizon. This one reads, "Superhero registration, will it pass?" As many of you know, the Superhero Registration Act required superpowered individuals to register their identities with the government. Iron Man ended up on the pro-registration side of the act, while Captain America was very strongly against it, causing the two to war against each other. However, prior to the act going into effect, Iron Man was actually on the front lines in DC trying to talk government officials out of it. He managed to hold them off for a while, up until the Stamford, Connecticut incident where a superhuman fight led to the loss of hundreds of innocent lives, at which point the act was fast-tracked. So this billboard to me suggests that we're still in the early days of the SRA and that it's possible Iron Man could be out campaigning against it currently. Or for all we know, he could even be with Reed and Yellow Jacket working on the Negative Zone prison concept, something they did together in the comics as well since they were all on the pro-registration side. This of course is all just my speculation since this game is very loosely based on the comics and mostly just references events that were going on at the time. In the grand scheme of things, all we really know is that these superhero geniuses are currently busy with anything else, so Peter won't have that kind of assistance in New York. So instead, he decides to act on Kingpin's idea and attempts to get permission from MJ.
MJ, it's me. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm helping
Good,
run a
that's
sort of
good.
shelter.
Hey, listen, I have a crazy idea that might save us. I'm going to Rikers prison to get a mad scientist to make a bomb to destroy the Sim things without hurting any of the people. I know the Tinkerer's in there.
Uh-huh.
Of course, I'm gonna have to break him out of prison because S.H.I.E.L.D. and the police are after me, but...
Uh-huh.
Mary Jane? I'll be breaking the law.
Okay, look. You have to do what you think is right.
Thanks. Gotta go. Okay, time to do something drastic.
Spider-Man, you realize that cell phones are not secure? Of course it does. A clever way to call for help, young man.
No, actually...
Don't do it.
You have the right idea.
You'll be a criminal.
You'll save the city.
Hey!
You want to do the right thing?
It's not that simple.
Hey, Rikers, it's an island. I need to fly over there. Volunteers?
It's kinda weird that Moon Knight just made a fuss about the plan and then immediately offered to lend a hand, but whatever, we're now presented with our next path decision. There's not much at stake here, we're really just choosing which character we want to take us to the prison, which will be showcased through a small cutscene as you're dropped off.
Good luck, Spider-Man.
The power of Khonshu is at your side.
What are you waiting for?
I was hoping the character we choose would tag along as air support or something, but no, that's the extent of their help. From here, we begin our prison break. However, we quickly run into the problem of needing a way to break through the heavy security doors, as well as the durable power generators in the area. The solution is to find a control panel that releases the villain Rhino from captivity and out into the courtyard. Now free, we can leap onto Rhino's back and use him as a battering ram to break through whatever necessary, which is what we'll do for the majority of this mission. Once inside, Rhino tells us that he's breaking out of the prison entirely and hops onto the elevator that would set him free. The only problem is that it's operated by a separate terminal, which Spider-Man is currently using. We're then presented with our next path choice, either be the good guy and keep Rhino contained at the prison, or say screw it and set him free. More specifically, when you choose the red path, Spider-Man will trick Rhino into believing that the lift is disabled, but that he could still escape by heading back the way they came in, knowing that the guards will just capture Rhino again. If you choose the dark path, however, Spider-Man will actually agree to set Rhino free by giving him access to the lift. This choice impacts your gameplay slightly, since if you free Rhino, you'll unlock him as another ally that can be summoned during gameplay. He operates a bit differently from the other ones though, since he won't run around and do his own thing. You instead have to jump on his back and guide him like in the prison level. He has some perks, like feeling powerful against groups and unstoppable in general, but ultimately I found him to be quite stiff to control and not that useful in the grand scheme. More of a novelty than a game changer. So as cool as it is, you won't be missing much if you choose the red path, since if you go that route, Rhino will be locked and unavailable as an ally. Still, this was one of my favorite choices in the story, since it felt like it actually had an effect on the game. I also like that the perk the player gets coincides with the bad path, since it gives the player something conflicting to decide on. Do I act like a hero and forego a gameplay bonus, or act more selfishly? So I thought this was a cool use of the choice feature. Continuing on, Peter will soon find Tinkerer's cell and free him. You may be asking, who is the Tinkerer and why is Peter willing to break the law to reach him? Well, he's a genius who's skilled in crafting innovative weapons and other devices. He then usually sells his creations to criminals, which is probably why he's in jail here. We've actually seen him in the movies before too, since he had a subtle role in Spider-Man Homecoming. But in Web of Shadows, with the lack of superhero geniuses in New York, Tinkerer is their next best shot at inventing something to stop the symbiotes. When they reach the rooftop, they're approached by a bunch of other characters, specifically Black Widow with a team of SHIELD soldiers, Vulture, Moon Knight, and lastly, Kingpin. Despite Black Widow's attempts to seize control of the situation, Kingpin is able to talk her into continuing forward with Tinkerer's assistance.
Ms. Romanoff, you can follow the book and be the scapegoat. Or you can truly take control.
I am not talking to you, Fisk.
Are your superiors giving you the means to succeed? Or ensuring your failure?
Take Spider-Man and the Tinkerer to the command station at Stark Tower. Let's move! Clear this area!
Well done, Commander.
Get out of here, Fisk.
Quite an interesting turn of events. Again, I like how Kingpin is shown subtly masterminding these events to suit himself, although we don't know to what end just yet. Desperate times call for desperate measures though, so it makes sense that Spider-Man and Black Widow would be receptive to this plan. By the way, we haven't really had an opportunity to discuss Black Widow's usage in the game, and it's certainly a surprise. More so that she's here acting as commander of this SHIELD team, tasked with containing the symbiote outbreak. In the comics, Black Widow has been an agent of SHIELD, so it's not too surprising to see her aiding them. Still, I'd expect her to be here as more of an agent or independent contractor, while someone like Nick Fury ran the show. So what's going on? Well, on a couple of the billboards around the city, we can see some headlines asking the same question. Where is Nick Fury? Just as a side note, the headline next to that one also mentions The Amazing Lobster Man, with the subtitle reading, Mary Jane Watson shines in new blockbuster film. This is a reference to the comics where MJ was cast in a movie about a fake superhero, Lobster Man. But anyway, going back to Nick Fury, I believe his disappearance is meant to tie in with the Secret War comic series. To clarify, this is Secret War singular, not to be confused with Secret Wars, the giant superhero battle epic. In Secret War, Nick Fury uncovers a plot stemming from the country Latveria to harm the United States. However, the US government won't do anything about it, so Fury decides to handle things himself while enlisting a secret team of heroes to aid him, which include members like Spider-Man, Luke Cage, and Wolverine, although none of them really knew the details of the mission. Even still, they accomplished what they set out to do, but Fury's secret war was still illegal and had ramifications that led back to New York, so at the end of the series, he goes into hiding. In his absence, Maria Hill was promoted to acting director of S.H.I.E.L.D., a position she continued to hold into the Civil War series. So presumably, Maria Hill is head of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the game too, while Fury is in hiding. Although Maria is never actually mentioned in the game, so this is just more of my speculation. However, if Civil War is gearing up as the billboards suggest, then perhaps that's what Maria Hill is dealing with, leaving Black Widow here to deal with the outbreak. It's not too crazy to see Black Widow acting as commander either, since she's a very high-ranking S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. In fact, during the 2007 Mighty Avengers series, Black Widow briefly takes command of S.H.I.E.L.D. during an Ultron invasion. At the time, Nick Fury was still absent, and Maria Hill was knocked unconscious. This left Widow as the highest-ranking available S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Still, it's mentioned a couple of times that Black Widow has superiors to answer to, which again, I assume would be Maria Hill, but it could just be the federal government. Speaking of superiors, we next see that a helicarrier has been sent to hover over the city to monitor the situation. However, it also blows up the bridges in hopes of preventing the infection from spreading. Spider-Man narrates that Black Widow's unnamed superiors aren't optimistic about their potential success at stopping the infection, so this is their next step. It's clear that things are only getting worse and that they won't be getting any help from the outside. It's all up to them now. The open world visually highlights the state of chaos, as what was once a bright, clean city is now much darker with smoke plumes in the distance, with the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier hovering ominously overhead. Another example of the change is the Daily Bugle sign, which looked normal at the beginning of the game, but is now damaged and missing letters. There's also a bunch of litter scattered around the city, and the rooftops show signs that civilians have been hanging out there for safety, and potentially a means to signal for help. The coolest and creepiest difference in the city is how symbiote goo can be found stringing between buildings as you swing around. Visually, it's a cool inclusion, but it's also pretty gross. We also see more symbiote types patrolling the open world, such as these white symbiotes. I absolutely love their design because they look so eerie and creepy. They're also very zombie-like, the way they just kind of mindlessly shamble towards you. They only take one hit to put down, so they aren't much of a threat, but they're still quite horrific to look at. So yeah, I really want to compliment the design team at Shaba since they did an excellent job transforming the city and its creatures to emphasize just how messed up Manhattan is now. It's clear that Venom's invasion is only gaining traction, and that the remaining heroes are clearly on the back foot. We also learn that Stark Tower has been made into S.H.I.E.L.D.'s base of operations for the time being. Speaking of Stark Tower, there's a detail about it I thought was pretty cool, and it's part of its design throughout the entire game. So when you look at the top of the tower, you'll see this strange shadowy object on top of it. So what is it? Well, it's actually due to the character Sentry and what was going on with him during the New Avengers comic series at the time. So spoilers, by the way, if you're reading those first 10 issues. For some context, Sentry is an extremely powerful superhero, as it said he harnesses the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. At one point though, his mind was manipulated by the telepathic mutant Mastermind on the orders of a mysterious benefactor. The effect was so strong that Mastermind basically got Sentry to rewrite the world to forget he ever existed. Eventually, the telepath Emma Frost was able to uncover how Sentry was manipulated and help him to set things straight, by making the world remember him again and reclaim his title as Sentry. In doing so, his headquarters known as the Watchtower also re-emerged, and its location was atop Stark Tower. The reason being that when Sentry wiped himself from people's memories, his Watchtower was hidden as well, making its building appear vacant. Tony Stark then bought it, turning it into Stark Tower. So when the Watchtower re-emerged, it appeared here on top of Stark Tower, so that's why it's in the game as well. You can even go up to it, although you can't really interact with it. Still, I thought it was a really cool comic detail to add into the game, and it remains a fun reminder of this time in comics. Continuing on, Black Widow is now our active quest giver, sending us on various activities around the city while Tinkerer tinkers. During one of our conversations, she tells us that he's having trouble completing his device and that he needs items that are in Kingpin's possession. Spider-Man has suspicions that Kingpin put him up to it, but it's never confirmed. Either way, this means we'll have to partner with Fisk, and Widow sends Spider-Man to tell him. As we head to Fisk Industries, there's also a cool Easter egg out behind it. It's a yacht named Vanessa. This is a reference to Vanessa Fisk, Kingpin's wife. As far as speaking with Kingpin, it couldn't be that easy, as he's enabled an electric barrier to protect himself and his building, so we'll next spend our time fighting his guards and disabling the power generators one by one. Once the building is disabled, we head inside to chat with Kingpin.
Kingpin, I cannot believe I'm saying these words, and I cannot believe I'm doing it without a fat joke. But, look, I need your help.
Help? To clean up this mess you made?
Mess? Mess? What? No, we need to move Tinkerer to your building. And why would you blame what's happening on me?
I see the family resemblance, don't you? I will make you a deal, Spider-Man. Help me out with a few errands, and I will consider helping you.
You want me to do your grocery shopping? I have super strength, but I'm not.
I want you to be my pawn. I want you to know that you saved Manhattan, but only by doing my bidding. Even if all I do is have you pick up a bit of litter, I know that it will gnaw at you for the rest of your days, that you had to help me save this city.
Okay, fine. What do you need?
Restore the defenses on my building. Things here were very secure until just a few minutes ago.
All right, fine. Then we're even.
So my initial reaction to this moment was, that's it? It seemed like Kingpin had been building up to some kind of grand scheme, or at the very least, was ready to really twist Spider-Man's arm now that he needs his help. But no, just go re-enable the defenses and help with some small tasks. It seems like Spider-Man got off easy here, as Kingpin just settled for some fun pettiness. And to his credit, the task of re-enabling his defenses was an effective one, since as the player, it feels really annoying having to go back and complete the same task I just completed, so I think it simulates Spider-Man's annoyance for us well. Still, there's more to Kingpin's motives than his momentary satisfaction. Kingpin will become our quest giver after this, and we get a chance to ask him about his true motivations. He's actually quite transparent about it, and it's clear he has the long game in mind.
When this is said and done, who will the people remember as their savior?
Me?
No, fool. Me, Wilson Fisk. When people remember me standing tall against the coming apocalypse, my tower being a beacon of safety and hope in this chaos, I will be the most admired man in New York. I am at the very center of what will save this city.
I don't believe that. Everybody knows you're a crime boss.
People love a story of redemption, boy. Maybe I'll run for mayor.
Despite Spider-Man's doubts, Fisk is absolutely right. People would forgive all his crimes and hail him as their champion. We've seen it in real life. I also like his comment about running for mayor at the end, since he actually gets elected mayor in the comics, although it occurred more recently in a 2017 series. Regardless, it's cool to see Kingpin thinking so far ahead, which I think is accurate to his character, but now that Kingpin has agreed to help, S.H.I.E.L.D. heads to Fisk Tower. From here, Tinkerer describes his plan to the group. Basically, he's discovered that the symbiotes are vulnerable to sound, so he's created a device that can generate a large sonic wave across the city. To amplify the signal, it needs to be placed on top of a skyscraper, and the only compatible one is the Trask building. We won't see Trask in this game, but you might recall him from the Ultimate Spider-Man one, where he featured more prominently. Anyway, using Trask Tower with the device should produce a wide enough frequency to destroy all the symbiotes without killing their hosts. To pull all this off, the Tinkerer only has a few small demands.
To complete this project, I require the following. Full access to the facilities here at Fisk Industries, $25 million in cash, a full pardon, and this castle in Italy with this woman from my favorite tool calendar waiting by the pool.
My laboratories are at your disposal, and if you allow me a moment to place a few calls, the castle and girl are yours. But I'm afraid the pardon, and of course the money, are up to my esteemed colleague from S.H.I.E.L.D.
Fine! Now, we just have to keep this city from self-destructing.
Wow, I can't believe they agreed to all of that with no pushback. Black Widow is definitely getting demoted once Fury returns. Or maybe she just plans on sniping Tinkerer after this invasion is resolved. Either way, we continue to patrol the city as needed, with Kingpin as our quest giver. We can have some optional conversations with him, which usually result in Spider-Man dishing out fat jokes.
One does not get where I am in life being nice.
One doesn't get to where you are in life without eating a few hundred donuts a week.
In the interest of personal gain, I can easily ignore your childish jokes.
It's quite obvious to everyone that you are indeed a master of personal gain. A waistline like yours is quite an achievement.
This is only a snippet of the many fat jokes Spider-Man will launch towards Kingpin in this game, so maybe I feel a bit bad for him now, and I know I've mentioned this in other videos, but I think it bears repeating that Kingpin isn't actually a fat guy. In the comics, he's all muscle and incredibly strong. You really don't want to fight him if you can avoid it. But anyway, as part of his deal, he'll send us on some missions. The first one is actually kinda cool, even though it's just to protect some of his men on a roof. One of the reasons I like it is its introduction, since it's another example of Shaba Games' knack for presenting cool visual moments. Here, they have us ride atop an aerial transport vehicle on our way, allowing us some time to scan the city. It may not seem like much, but it's another great cinematic moment that I really enjoyed. I also like how Black Cat shows up to fight alongside us, even if you're on the red path. It's a fun surprise, but even better is that we're still allowed to call in an ally, so we can have 2 allies fighting alongside us in this mission instead of the usual one. In this case, I picked Vulture for some added aerial assistance. After defending Fisk's men, Black Cat will inform us of more Electro-enhanced symbiotes around the city. Using her advice, we'll next investigate the source. What we find is Symbiote Electro with his own group of electric symbiotes worshipping him. This begins another boss fight, and it's a pretty straightforward one. We'll fight a bunch of minions, destroy all the pods that sprout up, and ultimately damage Symbiote Electro as much as possible. After doing that enough, we'll have another choice to make. If we go the red path, Spider-Man will verbally support Electro as he attempts to break free from the symbiote. He's successful, although still really shaken up. He'll then pass out, but he's freed nonetheless. If we choose the dark path, Spider-Man will motivate him more directly by beating the shit out of him.
Electro, you unbelievable loser! Fight this thing! Reject it! Tell it to let go of you! Let him go! Let go!
What was that? What is that?
That thing took your sister.
Die, you freak! I need some payback, man. Tell me when, tell me where. Fry 'em all!
Oh, you'll get your chance. Soon.
Regardless of which path you choose, Electro will now be unlocked as an ally in the game, but as usual, you can only summon him if you're aligned with the black suit. He's a pretty solid ally though. He'll keep his distance and perform electric blasts that have a lot of range. He also zips around frequently, making him difficult for enemies to hit. If anyone does manage to get close to him, he'll release this charge blast around himself. So I found him to be a really effective ally when summoned, making him a fitting late game unlock. Continuing on, Peter will eventually decide to regroup with Luke Cage and a shotgun-wielding MJ in Harlem. Together, they devise a plan to help evacuate Harlem's remaining civilians to a S.H.I.E.L.D. safe zone. While Luke and MJ get prepared, Spider-Man decides to head back to Wolverine. He's currently at the church, where he set a trap for the symbiotes. There are citizens hiding inside, and Wolverine discovered that the church's bell makes the symbiotes vulnerable, so he wants to use the bell when they inevitably come for the citizens in order to stun them and easily slice them up. As many of you will know, the bell is a fun inclusion because it's the same method Spider-Man used to remove the symbiote in the comics. A fun detail about this level is that if you ring the bell in your red suit, there won't be any effect, but if you're wearing the black suit, you'll stun yourself by ringing it. For this mission, we'll fight alongside Wolverine while attempting to keep the symbiotes from breaking into the church. If you fail, you get this short cutscene. If we manage to hold them off long enough, a S.H.I.E.L.D. transport will arrive to pick us up near the bell. However, the symbiote's rampage hasn't stopped, so Wolverine decides to buy us some time by fighting them head-on. Things don't go his way, since he's immediately overwhelmed and taken to the ground. By the time Spider-Man reaches him, it's too late as Wolverine has been corrupted by a symbiote, making this our next boss fight. Just like our last fight with Wolverine, he's still a very aggressive opponent, but even more powerful thanks to the symbiote. He's a tough one to gain momentum on, since he's really good about blocking, as well as interrupting attacks. He even grabbed me by the face and slammed me down once, so he's pretty intense. Counterattacking, as well as webbing him up, were really helpful strategies here. Early into the fight though, he'll reach one of the pods which gives him an armor of sorts, which are these things that look like protruding bones. To bypass it, you can use the bell, which will completely remove it. This is pretty short-lived though, as Wolverine will soon head to the bell and detach it before throwing it as part of a QuickTime event, which will crush you if you aren't ready. If you hit the button press, Spider-Man will dodge out of the way, and then use all of his strength to throw the bell right back at Wolverine, which looks really awesome, unless you miss the next button press. If you're successful though, Spider-Man will instead sling the bell back at Wolverine, who will then just break it with his claws. So despite it being a QuickTime event, I at least enjoyed the back and forth of the fight and the cinematography of the sequence. This brings us to the last phase of the fight, where we'll continue to slug it out 1v1 until we deal enough damage to Wolverine, at which point we're presented with our next choice. If you go with the red path, you'll stand by and offer moral support as Wolverine literally cuts the symbiote out of himself. If you choose the dark path, well, I'll just let you watch.
Kill you for this.
Wolverine is safe. Get back here and pick him up.
Damn, his solution was to tear him in half. That's crazy, and not at all what I expected would happen by choosing the dark path. On the one hand, I like how this choice demonstrates just how far gone Spider-Man has become as he further embraces the suit. On the other hand, I still never know what I'm going to get when selecting any of these suit paths, and I'm just picking based on good suit versus bad suit, which still feels pretty shallow. By the way, if you're wondering about Wolverine's fate here, he'll be fine. He's been ripped in half in the comics too, but thanks to his healing factor, he'll be able to join himself back together momentarily. So it's mostly just disrespectful on Spider-Man's end. We'll next head back to MJ and Luke, and now that we're nearing the end of the story, the game feels like it's committing more to the suit path you've been aligning with throughout the game. For example, here's how Luke and MJ greet you if you've been on the red path.
Spidey, man, am I glad to see you.
Thank God you're okay.
We're spread thin. Now I gotta take the lead convoy. MJ can ride with me. Spidey, can you protect the area until we're all underway? And then guard the last convoy?
Are you sure?
I'll be fine. Let's get everyone out of here.
Good luck, brother.
You too.
See you on the other side. Promise me, no more dark suit.
I promise.
If you're on the black suit path, this conversation goes much differently.
You got some nerve coming down here.
You are unbelievable. You like being like that. Admit it.
Yeah, I do. It's kept us both alive.
I don't know you anymore.
I'm still me. Only stronger, tougher, better.
So what's your story? Why are you here? Convoys are ready. Make sure they get off safely. And guard the rear.
Actually, I can handle this whole thing all by myself.
I'm going with Luke. Look, just promise me, no more of that dark suit.
Sure, whatever. I promise.
I'm really liking how the different suit personalities are being showcased here, and I'm especially enjoying Spider-Man's arrogant attitude with the black suit. Earlier, I mentioned not liking the voice that was selected for Spider-Man in Web of Shadows, and while I still feel that way, I do want to compliment Mike Vaughn's ability to switch between good and bad. If I were to speculate, I imagine it was the reason he was cast, because there's a very good distinction between the two personalities, so to speak. In fact, I think it's just his red suit voice that I'm not really feeling, while I'm actually digging the edgier dark suit voice. So despite my earlier criticisms, there are aspects of Mike Vaughn's performance that I'm enjoying, and as far as the story itself, I like that the different paths that we've been following feel like they're starting to become more impactful now. From here, we'll guard the convoy as it attempts to make its way to the safe zone. Also, I want to quickly mention this because I didn't really get it the first couple times I played this section, but Luke Cage and MJ are not in one of the vehicles we're protecting. I misunderstood Luke when he said that they'd be in the front convoy, thinking they'd be in the lead car, but I don't think they are. They were part of a separate convoy that left first. While off-screen, we've been waiting around to protect the final one. So there was a bit of a time jump, I believe, between these separate convoys, even though it's instantaneous for the player. But anyway, once the final convoy reaches Fisk Tower, it dawns on Spider-Man that Luke and MJ aren't there. He begins to panic and think the worst. As a side note, please ignore the double Kingpin's bug at the end of this scene.
Cage! No! 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 You! Where's Luke Cage?
Take it easy!
Girl with the shotgun!
What?
Answer me! I never should have let her go!
Uh-oh. Let me guess. Spider-Man saved everyone, but the ones he cares about the most. Some hero.
Shut up. No, I promised.
This brings us back to the beginning of the game, where we now know why Peter is so mopey in the intro. Presumably, he believes that MJ and Luke are dead, and that he's failed them. If I'm being totally honest, this feels a bit anticlimactic when you play the two cutscenes chronologically. At the start of the game, you think something really devastating has happened and that Peter is dealing with something heavy due to his choices. Really, he's just in his head because he couldn't find MJ and Luke for a moment. It doesn't feel impactful at all because there's no depth to it. If Peter had actively made a choice that resulted in MJ and Luke going missing, then I'd be with it since that would add some weight to this moment, but that's not the case. He was following their instructions regardless of his suit choices, and they just happened to go missing. There's no reason given why MJ and Luke aren't at the safe zone either, we just find them running from a horde later with no further explanation. Having them go missing temporarily feels like a plot contrivance to try and artificially insert some drama that links the intro with the rest of the story. I assume what happened was the writers originally had the idea of this opening intro and really loved it due to all the questions and emotions it evoked, but then secondarily tried to make it fit somewhere in the main narrative. I'm speculating, of course, but that's at least how it feels due to how hollow the link is. Whether that's accurate or not, I wish there was a bit more depth to what brings us to the opening intro because the actual answer feels lackluster. I imagine this could just be a side effect of the choice system though, since I'm sure it was hard to properly link the intro based on potential character choices. If this was a linear story with no player choice involved, it would make sense to have a moment where Peter gives into the black suit, and that choice causes MJ and Luke to get hurt or go missing. With the choice system though, if the player has been solely focused on the red suit path, that story beat doesn't really work since it conflicts with their choices. So my speculation is that the choice system might have hurt this story moment in particular. Interestingly, it seems that Shaba might not have been very into the choice system themselves, since in an interview with YouTuber GameBrain, studio head Chris Scholes states it was more of a marketing decision. Here's the quote. In all honesty, there were a couple features that marketing really wanted that we think just made the game worse. So there's a whole kind of red suit, black suit decision tree that they wanted, which is like player choice, and player choice is one of those things that every time you do a focus test, it always scores high because it sounds good. The interview kind of trails off from there, but it sounds to me like the choice system was a bit of a hindrance. For what it's worth, my personal opinion is that it's done well enough that it's an overall positive as far as fun factor, but I do think it hurts the story a bit since it leads to some clunkiness and awkward moments that I don't think would exist if this was a more linear story. To put it simply, a bonus to player engagement, but a con to narrative quality. To be fair though, I think the game ultimately sticks the landing, so let's continue forward. We pick back up with the moment after Black Cat grabbed us. Spider-Man is now trapped under a pile of symbiotes and decides to unleash the black suit again to finish things once and for all. Our next order of business is to chase down Black Cat, who herself has been corrupted by the symbiote. We'll track her to a nearby rooftop, where we'll have another boss fight against her. This was actually another one of my favorite fights in the game, since Black Cat has some great combat abilities and speed to rival our Spider-Man. For example, her symbiote-enhanced grapple makes her a threat at range, and her acrobatics make her evasive and hard to hit. She also has some solid AoE attacks that can be tough to dodge. She actually has a strong variety of attacks, so I never really knew what she'd throw at me next. I like the location choice as well, even though it's fairly simplistic, since we're essentially just high up on a rooftop. However, it pairs nicely with the gameplay, since the rooftop itself is large enough for a good brawl, but still small enough that the fight will often creep off onto the sides of the building or in the surrounding airspace. It feels very isolated, but also very free, which extends to the gameplay, since the thing I'm enjoying most about this fight is the ability for it to go anywhere. Black Cat's well-designed combat abilities, alongside continuous waves of minions, kept the pressure of the fight intense as well, forcing me to constantly adapt to a situation moment to moment. That pressure escalates even further when MJ shows up to try and lend a hand, at which point Black Cat orders her minions to focus her, forcing her onto the rooftop. Of course, even with a shotgun, she's severely outmatched, and all she can do is attempt to hold off the symbiotes as they approach her. This adds a new layer to the battle, where we have to protect MJ while trying to defeat Black Cat. If you let MJ get overwhelmed, you actually get a pretty sad fail cutscene. If you manage to protect MJ and deal enough damage to Black Cat, MJ will get back onto the hovercraft, at which point Black Cat will target her as part of another QuickTime event. If you miss the first couple of buttons, Black Cat will successfully throw MJ off the hovercraft to her death. There's also a funny one where I guess Spider-Man forgets he has web shooters. When you complete the QuickTime event successfully, Spider-Man will use Black Cat's momentum against her to throw her across town, leading to a really damaging fall. Spider-Man then heads to her side, as it seems she's on the verge of death. MJ soon arrives with the hovercraft, which brings us to our next path choice. This was another one that I didn't think was clear enough in regard to what I was choosing to do. You could be mistaken thinking that the red path might just place her in the hovercraft to take her to a hospital, and the dark path leaves her here or something like that. But that's not exactly the case, as this choice will actually influence your ending, and what you're really doing here, whether you realize it or not, is choosing who you want your girlfriend to be. If you choose the red path, as expected, you'll place Black Cat on the hovercraft with MJ, requesting that she be taken somewhere for help. Black Cat will randomly comment that Spider-Man really loves MJ, and they'll fly away, leaving Spider-Man to deal with what comes next alone. If you choose the dark path, Spider-Man will fully embrace Black Cat, and I actually feel bad for MJ here.
Hurry!
No, I need her.
Peter? Peter! What are you doing? What are you doing?
Alicia!
I knew it. I knew it loved me.
Get us out of here! Oh God, get us out of here!
It's time.
That's pretty rough, almost like MJ just caught them cheating. As bad as I feel for MJ, I do need to compliment how awesome of a suit design this is for Black Cat. I think it's a really cool way of infusing the symbiote into her style, especially how it forms to create her mask. I also thought it was a great detail that Spider-Man and Black Cat are now together during the Mission Accomplished screen. Usually it's just Spider-Man solo striking a pose, so throwing Black Cat in here was a nice touch and really emphasizes their unity due to your choice. This is further reinforced once gameplay resumes, where she'll hang around with you for a moment as you head to your next destination. Another detail I found interesting is that her little character icon at the bottom right will be updated for her new look. This icon shows who you can summon as an ally, and hers usually features her mask. After her redesign, she's maskless. From here, we'll head to Fisk Tower to see what progress has been made. As the player, we see that the device is now in place and ready for detonation. Spider-Man will soon join the group, and interestingly, word must travel fast because that last choice will now influence how characters react to you here. For example, if you chose Black Cat, Widow will no longer trust you.
Stay away from the device!
Nice to find you all so cooperative.
Hold it right there, Spider-Man!
Nice to see you, too.
You infected that woman. You're one of them!
That woman is my friend.
One word from me and you're...
Enough! Tinkerer, let's get on with this!
If you chose MJ, things will proceed normally as Spider-Man enters the room and tells us to hurry and detonate the device. No matter what path you're on, our plans are soon hindered as suddenly, a symbiote-corrupted Vulture attacks the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents guarding the Tinkerer's device and cuts the data link to it. He's also used a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent's camera to call out Spider-Man. If you're on the black suit path, this will be Spider-Man's response.
Hey, you heard him. He's calling me out. This is all really quite simple. The strong survive, and the weak die.
Gentlemen, we must prepare for the worst. Spider-Man can no longer be trusted.
If you're on the red suit path, Spider-Man's reaction will sound a lot more noble.
Hey, he's right. This is about me. It started with me, and now I'm gonna end it.
After Vulture's symbiote reveal, I was curious if we could pinpoint when roughly he was taken over. I initially assumed it'd be when we were first introduced to the Vulture symbiote minions, but you can still call Vulture in like normal during those sections, and he doesn't say anything about them. However, later in the game, when we begin the Convoy escort mission for MJ and Luke, both Black Cat and Vulture's character icons are suddenly missing from the available ally area. It's just Rhino and Electro. I think we're meant to assume from this that this is around the point when both Vulture and Black Cat were overtaken, since it's not long after that we see them both emerge with symbiotes, so I thought that was a neat little detail. As a further side note, it seems there was supposed to be another symbiote corrupted character that never made it into the final game. During the game's credits, we can see a concept art for a symbiote Moon Knight. I'm unsure when that would happen in the story and how that boss fight might have played out, but it's a great design and pretty cool to see nonetheless. But next, we'll ride atop another S.H.I.E.L.D. hovercraft as we prepare to encounter Vulture. This begins the boss battle, which plays a lot like our last Vulture fight. We'll zip to his various flying minions to stay airborne while we make our path to Vulture. Once we get our hands on him, we'll damage him as much as possible until he flees to another location, where we'll repeat the process. So nothing standout from a gameplay perspective, but trying to stay airborne and not fall out of the fight added some good tension throughout. What's really carrying the quality of this fight though, just like many of the other boss fights, is the cinematic qualities surrounding it. Of course, there's the fact that we're extremely high above the city, making things feel both epic and nerve-wracking, but one of my favorite details is how the environment shifts around us. At the beginning, Vulture has a bunch of symbiote platforms around him that you can leap to if you want to either destroy some of his pods, or use it as a bit of a safety net to land on. After the first phase, S.H.I.E.L.D. will call in fighter jets to airstrike them. This moves us away from them, making the platforms essentially useless to us. What we get instead though are S.H.I.E.L.D. hovercrafts that circle around the area, and they act as anchor points for you to swing from. Well, sort of, since it's an illusion, as you're really just sky swinging. Still, the extra traversal freedom was nice, but more than that, I'm enjoying the thematics. The changing of the environment and all the motion within it makes it feel like I'm in the middle of an all-out aerial war in the skies, instead of it just feeling like a normal one-on-one boss fight. This continues into the next phase, where Vulture's minions gain some ground, destroying some of the hovercrafts. It's pretty crazy seeing them burn up and fall out of the sky right in the middle of the fight, and it makes things feel even more lively. So there's some really cool environmental shakeups occurring throughout this battle, and it really elevates the quality for me, to the point that I think it masks what might have otherwise just felt like a standard boss fight. But once we beat Vulture, we're in for another QuickTime event, where the majority of the death screens are Peter falling while wailing. When you're successful, you'll pin Vulture to the ground with his wing blades and presumably help him remove the symbiote, even though we never see that occur on screen. We instead cut to the top of the Trask building as Spider-Man investigates the device, all while Vulture makes one last plea for us to destroy it. His argument is that Venom is too strong to be destroyed by the device, and that Peter will need the power of the suit to stop him, something he won't have if he uses the machine. With our choices laid out, it's time for another suit path decision. Surprisingly, this path is actually selected for us by the game, based on our overall alignment. If you're on the red path, Spider-Man will choose to act heroically and activate the device. It works, sending out a pulse across the city which purges the symbiote from Spider-Man as well as the citizens who are infected. Alternatively, if the black suit path is chosen, Spider-Man will listen to Vulture's argument and choose to destroy the device. No matter which path you're on, Spider-Man will then hear from Black Widow that Venom has overtaken the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier. If you're on the black suit path, Spider-Man proclaims that he's going to kill Venom, and he orders Vulture to fly him up to the helicarrier. If you're on the red path, Moon Knight will arrive to fly Spider-Man up there instead. As we approach, either Moon Knight or Vulture will inform Spider-Man that the only way to stop the remaining symbiotes is to crash the helicarrier. To do so, our mission is to break various devices on the ship, which will allow us to access some of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s bombs, which we'll then plant around the area to destroy the helicarrier. This will be easier said than done, since when we arrive on the ship, we can see that all hell is broken loose, with symbiotes and S.H.I.E.L.D. agents engaging in a widespread battle. However, to help us juggle all of this, we'll have some help based on our earlier choices. For example, if you're on the red path, Wolverine, Moon Knight, and Luke Cage can be found fighting enemies alongside us. If you're on the black suit path, you'll find Electro, Black Cat, and Vulture assisting on board instead. There's one way this can deviate though. For example, if you're primarily on the black suit path but you chose MJ over Black Cat earlier, then Black Cat won't be here to help you, only Electro and Vulture. I was disappointed to see that ally differences didn't go beyond that though. For example, while mostly aligning with the red suit, I also chose to save Black Cat, so I was bummed to find that she still doesn't show up here at the end, regardless of my alignment. As a further example, I did another playthrough where I ripped Wolverine in half, but still kept my alignment red. I expected Wolverine to be absent since I was so awful to him, but no, he's still here at the end. I suppose it makes sense that certain characters are here to help no matter what, as long as you're on the same side, but I was hoping this last section would highlight your choices more distinctly, and I think the allies that arrive, or don't arrive, could be a cool way to do that. Once you successfully plant all the bombs though, Spider-Man will next have a brief radio conversation with either Moon Knight or Vulture. I thought the Vulture one was funny because he threatens to double-cross Spider-Man.
Maybe I'll just detonate the bombs with you on the ship.
Don't you dare.
The conversation is soon interrupted as Venom finally makes his appearance. Not in the way you'd expect either, as we see he's now grown to be a monstrous blob with multiple heads. He also shows us that he's collected all the bombs that we planted, so the ship isn't going down the way we hoped. Still, Spider-Man throws the gauntlet down.
This ends here and now, Venom. I'm destroying this ship, and you along with it. That's not like you, Brock. You always swore you'd protect the innocent. You'll have to kill me first.
This leads into our final boss fight against Giant Venom. It's actually pretty easy once you figure out what exactly the game is expecting you to do. It's not very clear at the start though, since you can attack the heads whenever, but there doesn't appear to be much difference in determining when one is vulnerable or not. So I spent a lot of time zipping and taking damage until I determined the timing. What you're supposed to do is wait until one of the heads presents itself forward as it readies for an attack. While it's in this spot, it's vulnerable to damage, and I found a quick web strike is the easiest and safest method to do so. Once you have this figured out, it's very much a rinse and repeat whack-a-mole process. Wait for a head to pop out and web strike it. Then wait for the next one and web strike it. Each head takes about 3 web strikes to pop, and once you've destroyed all but the main one, we'll enter the next and final phase of the fight, a quick time event. This one was actually surprisingly tough, but mostly because of the speed at which prompts appear, and the long gaps between them, making you forget that you're in the middle of a QuickTime event. There's only 4 of them, but they take place while Spider-Man and Venom are conversating, so it's easy to get lulled into the moment before wham, another QuickTime event. So you really have to stay on your toes. It's a good challenge for your reflexes, but I also found that it was taking me out of the moment. This is the big finale, so I wanted to focus on what's going on, but after a death or two, I realized I really needed to be at the ready the whole time, solely focused on the screen for whenever a button appeared. This is kind of a pro and a con, since as much as these higher stakes QuickTime events successfully made me feel tension, they also distracted me from the story, and at a pretty pivotal moment of it. Still, I appreciate that we're only getting a few button presses during this sequence, compared to Spider-Man 3, which was constantly pumping them out. As far as the conversation they're having, Spider-Man decides that the best course of action is to try and reason with Eddie Brock and not Venom. It doesn't work for much of the QTE, but eventually Eddie shows himself in the normal Venom form.
Parker, I'm going to...
What? Destroy every innocent life on Earth?
I can't stop it! So tired. Help me!
It seems Eddie himself has become a victim of the symbiote, so we have to make a choice. This one is ours to make again, and if you pick the red path, Spider-Man will attempt to help Eddie, but Eddie will decline and push Spider-Man away in hopes of saving him. Eddie decides that he must sacrifice himself to stop the symbiote.
That's right. My flesh, my mind, my heart. Time to die, like a man.
This is a good moment for Eddie, but I do have some criticisms. Let me first start by saying that typically, I think it's better to see the protagonist making active choices to win the day, especially in the climax of the story, so it felt a bit off to me having Eddie show up at the end and effectively take the reins. More than that, I think I'm having trouble going with it because he's a character we really haven't interacted with at all throughout the story. The one time we did was at the beginning, where he was acting really petty and evil, trying to kill MJ just because some of the symbiote chose to attach itself to Peter. We haven't seen any signs of heroism from him, so it's a tougher sell that he's not only willing to save Peter, but also make the ultimate sacrifice to destroy himself and Venom at the end here. I think fans of the comics will have more goodwill towards Eddie and be willing to go with it, but not everyone will be coming into this game with that knowledge, so I would have liked for the narrative to have built up Eddie's decision throughout the story in order to really earn this moment. I'm not really sure why we needed it to be Eddie to close out the story either, since I assume you could have Spider-Man win this final fight himself. For example, maybe by having this final boss fight be a prevention mission, where you have to fight Venom and keep him from removing the bombs that you placed, buying enough time for the helicarrier to blow up and crash like planned. My best guess is that maybe the writers involved felt that killing Eddie and Venom off was the appropriate way to end the invasion here, but since Red Suit Spider-Man can't kill, maybe Eddie sacrificing himself was the solution. Alternatively, they may have been trying to show a parallel between Peter and Eddie, as both of them have fallen prey to the symbiote's corruption. Still, I don't think it lands strong enough, and it felt a bit too abrupt in my opinion, so I would have preferred a different end solution. Admittedly, the Dark Suit path does show Spider-Man taking a more active role, just not in the way I expected.
Gotcha!
So long, Brock.
In all fairness, he did tell us he was going to do that.
I'm gonna end this once and for all. I spared him 4 days ago, but not today. Today, Venom dies.
No matter which path is chosen, the result is the same. Eddie is dead, and the helicarrier crashes into the water, leaving nothing but a blinding flash as we fade to black. This brings us to the multiple endings, of which there are 4 variations, so I'll introduce each one and then let you watch it in full. We'll start with what I deem to be the true ending, which you get by aligning with the red suit as well as picking MJ over Black Cat.
It took a few weeks. especially with the geniuses at S.H.I.E.L.D. blowing up all the bridges and tunnels. But life came back to Manhattan. Venom was gone, bad guys were beaten and thrown in jail. And for once, things look pretty good for our hero.
Oh my god. Are you narrating?
Hey MJ, how long were you standing there?
I heard superheroes like to do that, but I never thought that you'd.
Please.
We gonna do this thing or not?
If it gets you to forget that you caught me narrating. Yeah, you bet.
Now let's see what happens if you're aligned red, but picked Black Cat.
Hello there. Sorry I missed you. You know the drill.
I know you're there, and I know you won't pick up. I just hope that someday you'll understand that I did what I did because I was so desperate to win. I just wish I had the strength to do what was right. I'm sorry.
Definitely a sadder, lonelier ending. A win for Spider-Man, but a loss for Peter. Similarly, let's see what happens if you're aligned with the black suit, but picked MJ.
MJ. She thinks she can just walk away. She never understood what it means to have power. Neither did I. But now... I understand what power really is. You'll be mine again, Mary Jane. No one will ever say no to me again.
Yeah, I don't think she's coming back, Pete. Last but not least though, let's look at the Black Suit's ending where you pick Black Cat.
Well, darling, I promised you this city, and it's yours. What do you desire? We await your commands, sir.
I always believed that with great power came great responsibility.
And now?
I never knew what power was.
I love the modulation they put on Black Cat's voice. It really sells that they're infected, maybe even possessed by the power of the symbiote. It's crazy seeing Spider-Man ruling over the symbiotes too. I'm even more intrigued by the next part of this cutscene when we see how others react to Peter's choice.
The Tinkerer says he's ready. And our delivery boy...
Here he comes. Are you in full control?
I'm dandy.
Bring me Spider-Man, dead or alive.
I'm going with... dead.
For starters, I thought these endings were really good since they effectively demonstrate the meaning behind the slogan, "With great power comes great responsibility," showcasing the importance of maintaining that balance and the consequences otherwise. Spider-Man is a character who lives with a strong moral code, sometimes to his detriment, so I think the endings help us understand why it's so important to Peter that he remains so virtuous, since as we see in the Black Suit ending, he's achieved great power, but become a villain in the process. It also goes beyond him. Spider-Man's willingness to let the symbiote corrupt his morals has bled over to others, as we see heroes now react in escalation, fighting fire with fire by throwing Wolverine in the symbiote. We may not have a sequel to this game, but you can only imagine that this chain of events will naturally continue to evolve beyond this, and regardless of who wins, it'll be the city that suffers most when Wolverine and Spider-Man show down once again. And it's likely that neither of them will come out of it as a hero. So I really like the way that the Black Suit ending contrasts with the Red ending to sell those ideas. By the way, I mentioned a sequel, and there are some details regarding one that was cancelled, but I'll go over that in the conclusion of this video, since first I want to wrap up my thoughts on the rest of this story. So overall, I was kinda mixed with it. Honestly, there were moments that felt pretty sloppy due to awkward story beats and transitions. These would usually feel quite impactful on the quality of a narrative, but luckily for Web of Shadows, its positive elements are so strong that they overshadow it. Things like the uniqueness of the post-apocalyptic setting and the generous amount of character cameos spread throughout help keep things interesting. But what I really think is carrying the story is the concept of red versus black in general, since it's so fun seeing a game dig into the symbiote suit to this degree. I think that's really important because I'm sure Shaba must have had some anxiety about doing a symbiote game 1 year after Spider-Man 3. In my opinion, Web of Shadows delivers on what Spider-Man 3 couldn't, since we get a lot of time to really see Peter embrace the darkness of the suit and utilize it to a significant degree. I enjoyed the red suit path, but by far and away the black suit moments were the most entertaining, since you never knew what Peter was going to do next. Ripping Wolverine in half is certainly a moment that stands out. We're also used to seeing Peter always act so altruistically that getting to see him really give in and act impulsive and selfish for a change was very refreshing. This is potentially a benefit that I need to credit towards the choice system, because the black suit path is kind of a what-if story, which allows Shaba to explore it more freely. For example, killing Venom at the end is certainly intense and against Spider-Man's no-kill rule, but since it's on the black suit path, it almost doesn't count. So in that way, both the players and Shaba get to enjoy an unhinged Spider-Man without much consequence. I know I've been mixed on the choice system, and even though I think the story likely would have been tighter without it, I do think it pairs nicely with the red versus black concept, making it more of a pro than a con in the grand scheme. So ultimately, I think Shaba and Brian Reed succeeded in providing an engaging symbiote Spider-Man story, despite numerous speed bumps along the way. When looking at Web of Shadows' biggest feats though, the gameplay is the real star of this show, so let's next dig into those features more, as well as the game's open world. The combat in Web of Shadows actually has quite a lot of depth to it. As we discussed, each suit has its own distinct playstyle and moveset. The red suit is all about speed and agility, allowing you to keep the pressure on enemies with minimal downtime. It's also the suit that incorporates webbing into the mix, giving you the ability to tie up enemies to provide an opening. The black suit, on the other hand, is all about strength and power. It's slower to use, but each hit feels more impactful, and includes some fun area of effect attacks. For my first 2 playthroughs, I used one suit pretty much exclusively for both story choices and gameplay, since the suit you use in combat has a small influence on your alignment. However, you can totally mix and match suits from the get-go if you want, which was what I did in my 3rd playthrough. Swapping suits on the fly is the preferable way to get the full depth of the combat, and I like that there's a high skill ceiling that allows players ample opportunity to explore new combos and optimal ways to dispatch enemies between the 2 suits. Just at my basic skill level, I had fun doing things like using the red suit to web up enemies, buying me time to then unleash the black suit on them, or using what I currently had unlocked in my black suit chain combo, and then chaining it further with the last part of a red suit combo. On the flip side, I was pleasantly surprised to find that each suit effectively stands on its own, so playing exclusively with one suit the whole time is still viable. In fact, it was fun maxing out the skill trees for a whole suit and really exploring the full capabilities of it. If I were to compare the two, I think I found the red suit to be more useful in most situations, since it's so quick and webbing aggressive enemies was very helpful. It also performs better mid-air thanks to its dive kick, which was nice for closing gaps, initiating a combo, and juggling enemies. The black suit is a lot of fun, but its slower animations can make it tough to gain momentum since it's easy to get interrupted. However, what it lacks in speed, it certainly makes up for in power. Some of my favorite abilities belong to the black suit, both due to the satisfaction of its hits landing, as well as the exciting visuals. For example, there's a really satisfying wide-sweeping tendril combo that, when successful, hits just about everyone in front of you with a devastating impact. This was my favorite to perform because it always felt like such a powerful, room-clearing move. There are also some great visual effects that enhance the feeling of power behind the black suit's attacks. For example, I noticed there's a bit of a slowdown effect when you initiate your get over here tendril grab before time speeds back up as you slam them to the ground, which itself has a very brief slowdown on impact to emphasize the power of the slam. Another example of this is the camera zooming in when you tackle an enemy. For some context, through upgrades, after tackling someone you're given the ability to punch them repeatedly, which already feels quite vicious. It only gets more brutal as you upgrade it, as the upgrades allow you to extend this chain with even more punches, so you can just keep pummeling an enemy relentlessly if you get the timing down, which just feels absolutely merciless, but fitting for the black suit. The zoom in effect only amplifies things, as it makes the attack feel very claustrophobic and focused, like a cage match, which I think makes it all the more intense. The black suit also just feels more thematic to use in general, like I'm fighting fire with fire when Spider-Man usually pulls his punches. It feels great showing up to fight a villain and just unleashing everything you got on them. So Shaba's combat team did an excellent job of making the black suit's combat feel aggressive and unrestrained, which is exactly what I want from it. It's pretty cool how both suits feel like they have their own distinct personality that their moves are based around, which makes performing them all the more engaging. Overall, I'm really impressed with how much depth there is to the combat, and that's before you even throw in the ability to fight along walls and in the air, which is a massive accomplishment in itself. It really is an astonishing feat what Shaba managed to pull off, especially with just a 17-month development window. Not to be a buzzkill, but I should mention that it's not all flawless, as there were certainly some hiccups I experienced along the way. To start, the lock-on feature had a few quirks that I struggled with. For example, often my locked enemy would drift off screen or not remain centered enough, which caused me to reflexively push my right stick to try and reorient it. But in locked on mode, that's how you switch between enemies, so my screen would then jump around as the game attempted to center other enemies in the area. The spider sense was disorienting in the open world in that way too, since when you trigger it, the camera whips to whoever it can locate the moment it picks them up. I would have preferred just a pulse that highlights them all, at which point I could lock onto them separately if I wanted to. The spider sense button also struggled when I was trying to rescue civilians, since you're meant to press that same button when one is in danger. Whenever I did this though, it never actually pinpointed the civilian, and would instead keep trying to track enemies, making for a very clumsy and panicked experience as I tried to save someone. Outside of the camera, I experienced plenty of other bugs too, like leaping onto a rooftop but it not registering, so I just float around in a dive animation the whole time. Or occasionally my sensitivity would skyrocket after moving from a wall to a rooftop, making things really disorienting. Or shield caravans getting stuck and repeatedly crashing into walls during missions when I'm required to follow them to a destination, forcing me to reload a save. Or civilians that need to be rescued end up trapped inside a wall, also requiring me to reload the level. It was pretty common for enemies to get stuck in walls as well. So the game definitely has its moments where it struggles, and I don't bring it up to be mean-spirited, but more so to be transparent. I tend to give this game a pass, since because it contains such ambitious and innovative features, I pretty much expect it to break from time to time, especially with its limited development window. So even though it can be a bit awkward to play at moments, what it's delivering far outweighs those setbacks. If anything, it makes me wish that Shaba had more development time, because I think a lot of these quirks would have been ironed out. There might have even been extra game modes, since during that same interview with GameBrain, Chris Scholes mentions that they ended up removing a Grand Theft Auto-like wanted system in the open world, where you could wreak havoc in the black suit and have police come after you. Venom had a mode like that in Ultimate Spider-Man, which was a lot of fun, and I think that could have been really cool in Web of Shadows. But while we're on the topic of the open world, let's look at what there is to do outside of the main story, as well as the Easter eggs and references contained within it. The first place I want to start is with the side missions and collectibles, since they're quite different here compared to what we're used to. If you've played any other open world Spider-Man games, the open world content usually includes things like time trials, villain side missions, combat tours, and hidden collectibles. Web of Shadows doesn't go that route, and instead takes a more simplified approach. It of course has random events where you can swing around the city and stop a variety of crimes as they emerge, but that's about it in the open world. There are very basic side missions, but they're integrated into the main story. The way those work is that in between the main story beats, you'll usually be tasked by whoever your quest giver is to go around the city and stop a certain amount of crimes or defeat a specific enemy type a few more times. Some of these are mandatory before starting the next main mission, while some of them are optional for if you're hoping to collect some extra XP. Honestly, they aren't very exciting and feel more like filler, but I at least appreciate that they aren't very time consuming. This is the extent of the side missions though. There aren't any additional villains that you can track down in your spare time, no combat tours, no time trials, although that last one I don't want anyway, so that might actually be a compliment. And when you beat the game, you aren't dropped back into the open world to explore as you want either. It's just game complete, time to start a new one. So no New Game Plus either. As you can imagine, I was a bit disappointed with the lack of extra open world content available. However, if I were to try to look at it from Shaba's perspective, they were operating on very limited time and pushing for some innovative combat features, so if you have to cut development resources somewhere, this is probably a good place to do it. I should still mention that there are still tokens to collect in the open world, but these work differently from what we're used to as well. In other games, they're usually hidden around the world and you're rewarded for finding them all. Here, they aren't hidden at all. In fact, they're scattered in abundance. As we saw, they even show up in cutscenes. When I say they're everywhere, I mean it. There were plenty of times where I would just hop from rooftop to rooftop and grab them. For the longest time, I wasn't even sure if they were randomly generated or not, because they're always readily available. They're not randomly generated, but there are over 2,000 tokens across the map. By the way, how you're rewarded for collecting them is that as you reach a certain threshold, you'll receive an increase to your swing speed, health bar, and special meter, so they're certainly worth grabbing. I found that playing the game normally and just casually collecting them as I traversed around the city typically leveled me up sufficiently without me needing to grind for them. I actually appreciate that a lot because compared to other games, finding tokens usually became a tedious chore, so having them all easy to collect here was kinda nice. You don't even need to collect them all either. It's another optional task that you really only need to do to level up a few times in order to comfortably tackle the rest of the game. So looking at the token system on paper, it sounds like something that might be too easy and kind of boring, but to my surprise, it's set up in a way that's actually kind of relaxing, as it's satisfying collecting them as you naturally explore the city. The only downside I have to it is that it became a bit distracting. There's this impulsive, shiny effect I experienced, where I would often drop whatever I was doing to go grab a token. That's not a problem in itself, but I did notice that it detracted from how often I was going for extended web swinging sessions. In all the open world Spider-Man games I've played, swinging around the city for long stretches of time can be relaxing and a bit cathartic. In those games, I tend to drift off and just swing while losing track of time, and it's really nice. In Web of Shadows, I don't really do that, as I impulsively break a swing regularly to go grab a token. Again, this isn't an issue by any means, but it was a regular habit of mine that I found interesting, and I'm wondering if other players did the same. But outside of token collecting and random crimes, that's about it for open world events. As I've mentioned a few times though, the art and design teams did a phenomenal job creating their Manhattan, so there's still plenty of fun visuals to find. One of my favorite details are all the billboards and posters scattered around the city, the majority of which are some kind of comic book reference. So let's look at everything I could find. To start, S.H.I.E.L.D. has a few different billboards, such as this advertisement to recruit new pilots. There's another recruitment billboard that also advertises S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Fleet Week, which I assume is an air show. Below that first S.H.I.E.L.D. billboard is a banner featuring the Shaba Games logo alongside the Treyarch logo. There are plenty of other company billboards as well, such as these two. On the left is one for Stark International, owned of course by Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. There's also an even better Stark billboard, this time featuring the Iron Man helmet. It looks great, and it's cool getting a glimpse at Iron Man in this game's universe. From what I can tell, it looks to be based on the current suit he was wearing in the comics at the time too. Then to the right is Damage Control. Damage Control is the company whose job it is to clean up and rebuild destruction caused by superhuman fights. In the movies, this is the same company owned by Tony Stark that ran Adrian Toomes out of business in Spider-Man Homecoming. Underneath those billboards are some additional ads. To the right is one for Advanced Idea Mechanics, or AIM for short. They're a scientific villain organization in the comics, known for wearing these beekeeper-looking suits, and probably best associated with the villain MODOK. We can actually see the beekeeper suits in two other billboards for AIM, one which shows a sole member conducting some research, while another billboard showcases a team of scientists. So AIM is making quite a recruitment push. Next to that first AIM ad is one for the Nelson and Murdoch law firm, which is another nod to Daredevil. When he's not Daredevil, he's Matt Murdock, an attorney who owns a law firm with his partner Foggy Nelson. This next one's a cool one, and it's the cover for Global News Magazine's Man of the Year, which is Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. The other headlines are what's most interesting about this though. More specifically, one reads, "Interview with Osborn, the new science frontier." This must be a reference to Norman Osborn, aka Green Goblin, and his company Oscorp, which we can find another billboard advertising, and we can even visit the building itself. We unfortunately don't know much about Goblin in this game's universe, only that Spider-Man has encountered him before. The other headline on this cover reads, "Nick's Last Stand with S.H.I.E.L.D., which as we discussed, I assume is another reference to his absence after Secret War. Another billboard advertises the Rand Company. You can also find this building out in the city. Rand is a reference to Danny Rand, aka Iron Fist. We can also find an advertisement for Hydra, the Nazi organization from the comics, recruiting new members for a new order of Hydra. That can't be good, as I doubt they're turning a new leaf. On a similar note, there's also an ad for Wygo Industries, which in the comics is a front for Hydra. You get a little nod to that in the billboard's art, with multiple curls resembling the tentacles like in the Hydra logo. There are also numerous posters scattered around the city, although most of them I don't believe are comic references. However, there is one for a Dazzler concert. This would be a reference to the mutant hero Dazzler, who's a singer with the ability to create light from sounds, which she uses to create dazzling light shows during her performances. If you head to one of the cinemas in the city, you'll also find an ad for a movie coming soon called My Invader, which features artwork that resembles Venom, so I thought that was kind of funny. It's also funny that there are legitimate ads in the game as well, namely for 5 Gum, and you can find a variety of them around the city. I've saved my favorite references for last though, and they revolve around the Fantastic Four. The first one is for Human's Hot Wax, which it seems Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, has been paid to advertise. Not only because Human and Human sound alike, but also because Johnny is a big car guy in the comics. I guess you could even say he's into hot rods. In his first appearance, he's seen working on a car, and he even helped Spider-Man build his Spider-Mobile. I like that Johnny's quote in the ad matches his cocky personality too. It reads, "I only use Human's car care products. Nothing else gives me that notice me shine." It's pretty cool seeing Johnny physically in the ad too, making it our only glimpse at what he would have looked like in the game's universe, as well as how the Fantastic Four outfits are designed. That's not the end of the Fantastic Four references either, as another billboard advertises visiting their headquarters, the Baxter Building. It states that you should visit the building for a special surprise awaits you. You can take them up on that offer, since the actual building exists in the game. When you reach the rooftop, you'll find the 4 logo painted on top, as well as spider tokens in the shape of a 4. So this was a really fun inclusion, and I thought it was a good recreation of the Baxter Building too. As a side note, this is probably a good time to mention that next up on the channel, we'll be examining the Fantastic Four even closer through a deep dive retrospective on the 2005 movie game, so keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, I also have a video on the cheesy Fantastic Four PS1 game that you can check out as well. But those are all of the billboard and poster Easter eggs I spotted in the city. Before moving on, there's still a couple fun details I noticed in the open world too. One of which is that if you punch these newspaper stands, newspapers will scatter across the ground. When you look at them closer, they're all from the Sam Raimi films. For example, these two read Wanted and Who's Spider-Man, which were both from the first movie. We can also find Spidey and Ock rob bank, which is from the second film. Another detail I enjoyed is that civilians will react to you on the street based on what suit you're wearing. If you're in the red suit, they'll cheer for you, but if you're in the black suit, they'll be frightened or show distaste for you. Funnily enough, these reactions can change instantaneously, even if you switch between suits right in front of the same NPCs. But that covers everything I wanted to discuss in the gameplay section, so now let's turn our attention to the game's sound design. As always, we'll start with some of the voice actors in the game, and where you might have heard them outside of Web of Shadows. We'll begin with our lead, Mike Vaughn, who voices Spider-Man. I know I was a bit hard on Mike earlier, but as I mentioned, he does do a good job of differentiating his voice between the two suit personalities, so although I'm not a fan of this portrayal, I think there are still some good moments. If you're curious about where else you might have seen or heard Mike, there are a couple things that could be familiar. For those of you that watch the Scream TV series, he voices the killer there, and in various Mario games like Super Mario Maker 2 and New Super Mario Bros. U, he voices Iggy Koopa and Ludwig von Koopa. We also have Tricia Helfer voicing Black Cat. I ended up liking her portrayal here, so I was happy to see that she reprised the role in the Spectacular Spider-Man animated series. She was also the only one I could find who did a promo video for the game, and in it, she tells us what she likes about the character.
Black Cat, I think, is a great role to play. She's sexy, she's seductive, but she's also incredibly intelligent. She's mysterious and mischievous, so she's got all these facets to a female character. I knew of Black Cat, obviously, so the idea of actually playing Black Cat was just too kind of good to be true. So when the opportunity came around to do the video game, I just thought, wow, great, yes. I can really kind of fully do Black Cat how I think she should be played. I find all of her appealing to play, but I like the playfulness. I like the strength. I like her sort of mischievous side. There's more to her than just purring and seductive. You know, she's very intelligent. She's very strong. She's got this whole bag of tricks. It's easy to step into that physicality. Sometimes you don't get that. You just get the sexy side.
Although Tricia has done additional voice acting roles like Sonya Blade in Mortal Kombat X, she's mostly a live-action actress. She's been in a variety of TV series like Supernatural, Battlestar Galactica, Lie to Me, and Criminal Minds to name a few. I also have to mention Steve Blum voicing Wolverine. I mention him a lot in these retrospectives, so I'll keep it brief, but I just wanted to confirm that it is indeed him voicing the role here. He's personally my favorite Wolverine voice, so I'm always excited to hear him as the character. He does so in a lot of games, for example the X-Men Legends and Marvel Ultimate Alliance series, and most currently in Marvel Rivals. Another actor you'll recognize from Rivals is Liam O'Brien, who voices Doctor Strange there. Obviously, Strange isn't in Web of Shadows, so who's he playing here? Well, this time he's voicing Electro, and although that was sort of a limited role, I thought he did a great job with the character, making him sound both threatening and unhinged.
I need some payback, man. Tell me when, tell me where. Fry 'em all!
We've actually heard Liam in a prior retrospective as well, since he voiced Johnny Blaze in the Ghost Rider movie game. I also want to briefly mention the voice actor playing Venom because he's got some fun credits. I'll probably pronounce this wrong, but the actor's name is Keith Zarabaka. Firstly, he's credited as voicing Mr. Aziz in the Spider-Man 2 game. He's also the voice of Wolverine in the Ultimate Spider-Man game, where he does a solid job. Where you'll most likely recognize him though is from the Dark Knight movie. He plays the cop that Joker uses as a hostage to escape from the police station. Many of you will recognize our voice actor for Luke Cage as well, played by Robert Wisdom. He's probably best known for his role on The Wire, where he played Howard Bunny Colvin. However, I know him best from his role in the Dark Knight Rises film, where he plays the army captain at the bridge. Outside of that, he also had a notable role in the show Barry, playing Jim Moss. He's a really good actor, and I think he did a great job with Luke Cage. Playing Kingpin is Greg Berger, and he's got some fun credits too, especially in regard to 90s Marvel animated shows. For starters, he voiced Mole Man in the Fantastic Four show, but many of you will recognize him best as the voice of Mysterio, as well as Kraven in the 90s Spider-Man animated series. We've also seen his work in another game I've covered on this channel, where he voiced Blob in X-Men Origins Wolverine. Lastly, I want to mention a couple smaller roles here, the two gang leaders during the Luke Cage chapter, since these two actors have some recognizable roles outside of Web of Shadows. Starting with Isaac Singleton Jr. playing the Park Avenue gang leader. I think many of you will remember him as Bo Sun in the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. He's also voiced the villain Thanos on numerous occasions, such as in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. You may also remember him as the fighter Albert King in Batman Arkham Knight. Then there's James Mathis III playing the Rolling Sevens gang leader. He's gone on to voice Black Panther on numerous occasions in games like Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, as well as in Marvel Rivals. Outside of Steve Blum, I didn't recognize any of these actors by their voices alone, so it was really cool seeing how many of them had bigger roles beyond this game. In Web of Shadows, I will admit that a lot of the voices in general throughout the game didn't always connect for me, but still, I think it's clear that the cast is all very talented, so again, I think it's more so that some of the roles just weren't exactly the right fit. I'm a lot more complimentary with the original soundtrack though, composed by Jamie Christopherson. Jamie did a great job of capturing the feel of Spider-Man in his OST, providing some really triumphant tracks. I think this first one is a great example of that. Slowing things down a bit, I thought this track was surprisingly pretty to listen to, and provided a nice, peaceful feel to the city in Act 1, before all hell breaks loose. This last track is one of my favorites. It's fast tempo, which is great for high energy fight scenes, but it also provides more of that triumphant Spider-Man vibe. Overall, I really enjoyed the soundtrack for Web of Shadows. It can be subtle and provide some great background energy, but it even stands on its own if you just want to listen to it for fun. But now that we've discussed the game's audio, let's start to wrap things up in the conclusion. Of all the games I've covered so far, I've never received as many requests for a video than I have for Spider-Man Web of Shadows. It's clearly a fan favorite and for good reason. Sure, it has its flaws, but I think that pales in comparison to what's accomplished in regard to gameplay. Shaba mentioned wanting to do for combat what Spider-Man 2 did for swinging, and I fully feel they succeeded. Taking fights to any surface seamlessly, moment to moment, is an outstanding feat, and it feels incredibly cinematic and accurate to what you'd expect from a Spider-Man fight. It's quite surprising that no game since has really replicated what Shaba did here. Even outside of the combat, this game feels incredibly original compared to others, with its story containing a darker mood, even letting players lead Spider-Man towards a darker, more villainous path. Plus, I love the abundance of Marvel cameos and references throughout. It truly feels like a story that takes place within the Marvel universe. Web of Shadows excels in giving fans the universe and gameplay they've been craving in a Spider-Man game, and I think it rightfully remains one of the best Spider-Man games ever made, which is why it's so frustrating that it didn't sell well enough to get a sequel. One of the most annoying lessons I've learned through covering games on this channel is that oftentimes, quality doesn't immediately correlate with sales. We've seen it with Ultimate Spider-Man, and more recently the Guardians of the Galaxy game. Web of Shadows is on that list too, because even with such limited development time, this was a great first outing, so I know a sequel under Shaba's vision could have been something truly incredible. If I were to speculate on why it didn't sell well, I don't think it was really Shaba's fault, more so the Spider-Man projects that released ahead of it. In 2007, just 1 year before Web of Shadows, Spider-Man Friend or Foe and Spider-Man 3 came out, both failing to impress. Not to mention the Spider-Man 3 movie, which was a major disappointment. It probably didn't help that Web of Shadows was another Symbiote story, further blurring the lines. So at the time, it would have felt like Spider-Man projects were releasing very rapidly and at low quality. It's not hard to imagine fans feeling a little lukewarm on Spider-Man's quality control at the time, writing off Web of Shadows before it even released. If I'm being honest, that's kinda how I felt back in the day, and it's why I missed out on it. I felt burned by the Spider-Man 3 game and to a lesser extent Friend or Foe, and I was nervous to put my money into the next one. Was I wrong to ignore it back then? Oh, absolutely. It's easily the best of the bunch and everything I wish Spider-Man 3 had been. But unfortunately, I think too many others wrote it off as well, hindering the success of the project that actually deserved attention the most. It's a real shame and I hate that for Shaba. As I mentioned earlier, a sequel had started development, making it roughly a year before cancellation. Thankfully, we at least have some knowledge about what the cancelled sequel might have looked like, thanks to the website of lead character artist B.D. Fulton, where he shows some of his concepts, including brief details regarding the game, which they were calling Spider-Man Classic. To quote Fulton, this is what he says about it. Our intention was to revisit classic Spider-Man villainy in short story fashion, like a best-of anthology of boss fights, told in panel-by-panel faithfulness to the original comic. As such, the game would have been a who's who of Spidey's rogue gallery minus Venom. Fulton goes on to show some of his concept images for villains that were planned to show up, the first of which is Carnage, who I might add looks awesome here. We're also shown a couple of concepts for Mysterio, and Fulton adds a bit more context to how Mysterio would have been used. Often ridiculed but with so much potential. With a fishbowl on his head and a goofy cape, he's laughable. My objective was to give him gravity, and one way to do that was to pull him away from the reality of a man in a suit. The real Mysterio was in a VR suit, puppeteering everything from behind the curtain. Once the illusion was broken though, he was doomed. Some interesting ideas regarding Mysterio that I would have really liked to see play out. The designs look incredible, and I think they were on the right track of making him an actual threat with some good gameplay potential. Interestingly, Fulton goes on to mention that Beanox used his Mysterio concept without any changes when they took over the Spider-Man reins for their game, Shattered Dimensions. Even cooler than the villains is that Fulton describes there being 2 playable characters this time around. Spider-Man would of course remain the central hero, but accompanying him would have been Wolverine, also playable. Ugh, we really live in the worst timeline because this game could have been so cool. Wolverine in Web of Shadows was one of the biggest highlights for me, and I loved every moment he was on screen. Hearing that we would have been able to play as him in this world is so exciting, but then it feels like a gut punch when you remember this game was cancelled. It's incredibly sad when a quality game doesn't get the recognition it deserves at the time. If it had, we probably would have received Spider-Man Classic, and I'd happily be reviewing it next. Sadly, it never came to be, and even more sad is that Shaba Games was shut down in 2009. An undeserving end for such a talented game studio. As I was researching this game, I was saddened when I came across this quote by studio head Chris Scholes as he was doing marketing interviews back in the day for Web of Shadows just prior to its release. The interviewer asks, "What's next for Shaba Games?" To which he says, quote, "We have a really strong idea of what we want to do at Shaba, and that's to stay making superhero games and really become the best in the world at doing it." It's great to hear that they had such passion to continue making superhero games, so it sucks reading that now, knowing that they had the drive to do some really cool things, but weren't given much of a chance. Just based off of their innovation and creativity with Web of Shadows, I really think they could have done something special with additional Spider-Man games, and maybe even developed games for other characters afterward. I really think that had they been given the chance to continue their vision, they'd be for Spider-Man then what Insomniac is for the character today, so I'm extremely disappointed that things ended here for Shaba. Still, I'm happy to celebrate what they accomplished with Web of Shadows. It's a game that continues to hold a special place in the hearts of many fans and inspire other creators in their attempts at crafting new Spider-Man experiences. In fact, I'm sure we'll discuss it a lot when we eventually look at Insomniac's Spider-Man 2. So even though Shaba weren't able to continue their Spider-Man universe, I hope they're proud of their accomplishments with Web of Shadows and the reputation it has amongst fans. I was happy to see that a lot of the staff from Shaba seem to be working together in a new studio, Free Range Games, creating games such as the Lord of the Rings Return to Moria, and the soon-to-release Reckless, which seems to be expanding on their skateboarding roots. So if you're looking to experience more from this development team, you can still do so through Free Range Games, and I'm personally looking forward to their future projects as well. Speaking of the future, I think that concludes my thoughts on Web of Shadows, so let's talk about what you can expect from this channel coming up. As I mentioned earlier, the next deep dive retrospective will be for the Fantastic Four 2005 movie game, which I'm very excited to revisit since I remember it being a very good game with some fun comic references. For the casual retrospective series, we'll soon be looking at the Batman and Robin movie game for PlayStation 1. After it randomly came up in my discussion of the Fantastic Four PS1 retrospective, I couldn't help but look at it myself to see if it's one of those games that outshines its bad movie. Spoiler alert, actually it's just as rough as you'd expect, maybe worse, but we'll discuss it in detail when that video releases. If you're looking for even more content, you can join me on Patreon and YouTube memberships, where I post updates and exclusive bonus videos, like this one for Web of Shadows that explores an early milestone build. But that'll cover everything for this video, so thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.